websites to keep you informed. The town's official calendar is at franklinma.gov/calendar. You can also visit franklinmatters.org. Community radio in the public interest. You're listening to WFPR-LP 102.9 Franklin Public Radio. You can listen online at WFPR.FM. Thanks for letting us be a part of your day.
Absolutely, and that's why it's important to do this on kind of a 10-year basis, which is kind of what we're trying to do here. It's just the 10-year look ahead and a guide for councils.
I think. Okay. Does the PA work? Chris, does the PA work? Okay. Thank you. Are you guys ready?
Ready.
Born ready.
3 weeks.
Did I leave a pen over
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 25th, 2023 Economic Development Subcommittee and Steering Committee meeting. I would like to call the meeting to order as it is 6:01. I have a note to residents. All citizens are welcome to attend public board and committee meetings in person. Additionally, in an effort to maximize citizen engagement opportunities, citizens will be able to continue to participate remotely via phone or Zoom. The meetings will also be live streamed by Franklin TV and shown on Comcast Channel 11 and Verizon Channel 29. You can click on the link in the agenda packet on the website to join us on Zoom, or you can call in. It's 1-929-205-6099 and enter the meeting ID number, which is 824-7438-3439, and then press pound. So it's 824-7438-3439, and then the pound number. So welcome everyone to this a little bit longer than our normal time that we have together meeting. I just wanted to remind people that we're here to be, I expect to be, everyone to be respectful and act civilly to each other. Also, I hope everyone has come with a resolution for 2023 that they are willing to listen to each other and maybe just come up with a solution to our problems that we have tonight. So, anyways, everyone on the steering committee is in chambers with me tonight. So we have Councilor Sheridan, Frangillo, and Jones, Beth Wehrling from the Planning Board, Greg Rondo from the Planning Board, and Bruce Hunchard from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So we're all together tonight, and it's snowing, and so we're, hopefully we won't get snowed in together. With that, I'm gonna turn it over to Jamie. Jamie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So through you to the committee. So on the agenda tonight, obviously, is the use table and the inclusionary zoning concepts. To pick up where the committee left off at the last meeting. I do want to note, if you're so inclined, Madam Chair, it's okay, but if you don't, but one thing the staff thought would be an interesting idea would be to kind of model out, at least as a start, just to depict a little more accurately and closely some of the issues that have been brought up about setbacks and parking requirements and space. Brian Taberner did a phenomenal job, and Brian, maybe you could come up to dive a little deeper into this, but essentially what Brian's done here is an overview of what a project would look like under the staff proposal, the original proposal that was put forth based on all the other regulatory use requirements in the town code. And I just want to highlight, before we get started, one issue that jumped off at us on the staff level, which I think makes this effective, is the issue of character has been brought up a few times in these meetings. And so I think this gives a good visual that hopefully everybody can look at this also from a character perspective. So this is GR5. This is most feeder streets around the downtown core. And when you really apply a project and take into consideration all the other setbacks and features and requirements, you're really looking at a parcel right here in a building that's quite big, patio, walkway, parking, and some green space around the periphery. So when we start talking about 50% of impervious of a parcel or 75%, or let's cut the setbacks down to 5 feet, 10 feet, whatever, we're also talking about major concessions, potentially, not my decision to make, but potentially concessions around quality of life and character of what you want the streets to really look like. And so Brian did this great rendering that's in the packet, and folks can look at it online. And Brian, maybe you can dig into the details a little bit about what the buffer zones are and all the other features. Thanks.
Sure, thank you. Brian Sperner, Director of Planning, Community Development. In your packet is that diagram that I came up with. I was getting a little concerned at some of the meetings, and when people come in and ask me questions about this, or, well, what does it mean if you have, 15 units per acre, things of that nature, and is it that too much, too little, whatever? And there are people that would like to change the impervious surface, allow, a lot of different issues. So I thought that what we could do is come up with an example, totally fictitious example. You're probably not going to find a totally square 40,000 square foot lot in all of that zoning district, but it is easy to put it that way. You're, that me? No.
No.
Good. Good.
So this is, can I just, this is an acre,
It's 40,000
40,000 square feet, right?
An acre is 43,560,
Yep.
but contractor or builder's acre, they say
Just wanna make sure.
40,000. So
Yep.
therefore, I use that as an example.
Excellent, thank you.
It's 200 feet by 200 feet, built the actual lot.
Yep.
And I used the setbacks that are required in General Residential 5. That's a dotted line around the edges, it's 20 feet in the front and back, and 15 feet on both sides. I'm going to go through down below on the zoning regs that are there. In that zone, you need 10,000 square feet or 100 feet of frontage. That says 200 feet of frontage. The impervious coverage for buildings only can go up to 30%. And the maximum impervious of buildings and paving can be 35%, up to 35%. So that could be 10% building and 25% parking lot, or whatever, but it can't go more than 35% in that. Otherwise, you need to get a variance from ZBA. Maximum building height is 3 stories in that area, just as it is pretty much town-wide in any of the zones. The current use regulations as far as housing units are that up to 1 unit may be permitted by planning board special permit per 1,000 square feet of lot area. So you have 40,000 square feet here. You could possibly get 40 housing units on that one lot by special permit and by the planning board. The proposal that we have, and you've been talking about quite some time now, is to change the multifamily housing units by right of 1 housing unit per 2,750 square feet of lot area. Now that comes out to 15.84 parcels per acre. So actually, if you had a full acre, you would get 16 units. As it is here with the 40,000, it comes, the multifamily housing units permitted by right would be 14.545 or 15 housing units, because you round up if it hits 0.5 or more. You need, in this scenario, with 15 housing units, you need 30 parking spaces. That's what the requirement is. However, the planning board does at times, upon request, waive some of the parking spaces down. So the proposed development, if you will, keep in mind that the buildings only can be up to 12,000 square feet. And then additional couple thousand square feet for the building and paving. So you can actually get up to 14,000 square feet of impervious surface on 40,000 square foot lot. So what I did was I kind of maxed it out, if you will, the impervious coverage, putting a 3-story residential building, the footprint being 6,300 feet. And then the additional impervious surfaces, which are mostly paving, but there's also some concrete pads in there and things of that nature, to 7,650 for a total of 13,950, which is just below the 14,000 max. One more parking space would push you over the max in this case, okay? So if you want more parking spaces, you have to have a smaller building, essentially, where it would work out. So what I would do as a developer, thank God I'm not, because you guys say, you know, some people say I'm not going to make any money or whatever the case may be on a small development like this, but I don't think it is a small development. I would go to them, you're required to have 30 parking spaces, 15 units times 2. I would go to them, the planning board, and request that they waive down to, say, 20 units. Not that they're going to automatically give you anything or whatever, but it is within a half a mile of the train station. You have a good story to tell there, and you have off-road parking for at least 1 space per unit. So you have some additional in addition to that. And you know, just to show you there, I put in some areas where, for instance, a vegetated buffer, because if you need a vegetated buffer between another parcel if you have more than a certain amount of parking spaces and all the other things. So these are just things that are thrown in there. It's generic, but it gives you an idea of what a developer could do if they had a 40,000 square foot lot. And this is, except for the waiver, it's all by right. There's no special permits involved. And if we were to change the zoning the way we're proposing to change it. If you increase the impervious coverage in it and something like that, then you're going to be able to do more development, which means more paving, more cars, more building. You'll have a denser neighborhood if you do that. I would like to just talk about the current general residential 5 for a minute, where we are today. I did an assessment, which I'm not going to bore you with too many things, but currently there's 187 parcels that are general residential 5. It's roughly 82.45 acres. 76 of the parcels have one-family houses on them. Okay, 54 have duplexes. 15 have 3-family, 10 have 4-family, 6 have 5, 3 have 6-family, 1 has a 7. And then 1 has 18 units, and then 1 is the larger development, 257 units on Dean Ave. Okay. So that's a total of 599 housing units in the general residential 5 now, currently today. And you know, a substantial amount of them are the development down on Dean Ave. So if you take that off for a minute, a lot of general residential 5 are single family here and a duplex and a 3-family and another single family, and that's the type of neighborhood it is right now. Yes, it has 5, 6-family, for instance, but that's distributed throughout the whole area. They're not like all lined up or anything. These are scattered. So if you develop what I'm proposing here, just one of those, that would be the 3rd largest housing development in the general residential 5. Okay? This could be done by right with what we're proposing. Do we need to get large development in that area, or would that totally change the character if we say we need to allow more housing units? We need to so I understand that a developer they're gonna buy land, they need to have a certain amount of profit out of it at the end, and they have their formulas they go through, and they can figure out whether or not they're going to make money or not. Allowing multifamily up to 40, for instance, by special permit, that hasn't been working all that well right now, because otherwise we would have a lot more larger developments in the general residential 5. We have smaller multifamily developments right now. And like I said, this would be literally the third largest multifamily in that whole zone, which is over 80 acres of our surrounding the downtown area right now. So I just wanted to lay that out there. It's a decision of town council to vote on any final thing at all. I think it's a good thing, time to debate whether that type of thing is too big, too small, just right, or whether you want to, totally go in another direction with this. But that size development is essentially what MBTA requires for us to be able to permit by right. If we want larger than that, then obviously the town can decide. If we want smaller than that, we're not going to meet the MBTA requirements. So, there you go. Give it back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Brian, thank you for that. I do have I was just thinking, because we're always talking about stormwater. And I was thinking about the patio pavers, and if it was a pervious patio paver, then that wouldn't be part of the impervious coverage.
Well,
Right.
the way I did it is the red, orange area,
Yep,
that are, they're not impervious, they're a pervious paver.
they're pervious.
So the
Okay.
water can drain
All right.
right down through.
Okay, so
Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to, put that much.
so your
paving down.
impervious coverage is the parking lot and the building.
Yeah, and
Okay,
also
all right.
there's a small dumpster pad and a couple
Yeah,
of,
I see that.
and there's a
I see
couple
that.
little areas where you have handicap ramps, which are best to be a solid ramp. So other than
Yeah,
that.
I see that.
Other
see
than
that.
that, it's all.
Thank you for doing this. I think it helps people visualize what we're talking about, and hopefully people at home are seeing this as well. I know everybody probably has a question for you.
I want to make one point about the diagram.
Yeah,
It is, believe it or not, I made that diagram using Microsoft Excel. Okay, so it is not a really detailed schematic. If you get out your rulers, you might say, oh, that's not 200 feet, that's 199. Okay,
Yeah.
so I just want you to know that you will find fault if you
Okay,
really
all right.
want to look for it. That is a concept that was put out there for your discussion.
all right, we won't yell at you if
All right.
it's
Thank
not
you.
perfect.
Thank you.
I
Appreciate
promise.
It sounds like Doc Brown from Back to the Future. It's not to scale, but it's a good rendition of what we have. So that's okay. This will work.
Still, thank you for this. I think it helps a lot. I'm going to go over to Bruce.
Thank you. Brian, I think the drawing's fine. I think you did a great job on the drawing. You did a great job with your presentation. I just got a couple of questions. Maybe one is the main one. You did a lot of numbers. How many actual lots in GR5 are 40,000 square feet?
Like I said, you're not going to find them. In GR5, they're required to have a 10,000 square foot lot. GR5 probably has more lots that are not 10,000 than that do. Okay, so you would have to take 2-3 parcels in a row to develop something like this, but there are a couple that are this size, but most of them would be combining lots together,
Well, especially in this GR5.
especially GR5, correct, yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. Greg?
We'll get this somewhere.
Greg?
I'll wait for everybody else. I'm still.
Beth?
I want to hear from Doris first.
Okay. Patrick? Colby?
Yeah, thanks. I think this is huge and very helpful for framing. I want to, as we get a little more time, I want to bring back the entire framing about why we're doing this, why this conversation ever started. I'm very proud to say that we initiated this conversation before the MBTA Communities Act, right? This wasn't just about meeting the state law. This was a problem that was identified in town and looking for a solution to that. Now, what was that? The problem is that in order to pay for all the services that we all enjoy, we need to grow. Now, we also need to talk about raising taxes. We also need to find opportunities to reduce expenditures on services. But at the end of the day, unless you're going to majorly cut services, we need to continue growing. So then the question becomes, well, where do we grow? And we've heard from residents time and time again. We also sense in our finances that the growth on the edge of town, continuing to make developments that knock down old forests, or building large apartment complexes in places adjacent to single-family homes is not the type of growth that we want. And so then the question becomes, well, where can we do it? And that's why we're talking about our downtown. Because if we can allow our downtown to breathe just a little, to add a few more units, a little piece at a time, add a little commercial, those housing units then support that commercial. We hear, again, the number one concern we hear from the senior center is that they can't find housing. The number one concern I hear from my peers, and the concern that I have currently, is that I can't find housing that I can afford. And so smaller units downtown that don't add to our infrastructure expenses, that do support our businesses, those are the sort of things that we want. And we know that we like these types of communities because it's the types of communities that we visit on the weekend, when you go to a walkable downtown. That's what this whole conversation is. So I get the framing around, it's easy to be tempted to frame around what currently is there and how can we, marginally change that or barely do that just to meet the law. I would rather start from what is the vision and how can we meet that vision. And I think that it's not doing the bare minimum. It's doing what needs to be done in town while still meeting the needs of the current neighborhood character. So it's a subtle flip, but I don't know. I just feel like that's an important framing as to this entire conversation. That's what I have for now, but I have a lot more thoughts on actual numbers when we get going here.
Jamie?
Through you, Madam Chair. I think Bruce's question is poignant because the model that's up on the screen is really hard to do. Almost, I wouldn't say impossible, because if we look out 10, 15, 20 years, which this zoning and I think to Councilor Frangillo's point, the vision is about that, right? This is not Legos. No one's building stuff tomorrow, okay? And so I think to go back to the staff proposal, when the 3 housing units part was brought up about the 3 housing units in the zoning district, what Brian just illustrated is why. Because one of the greater opportunities, possibly before the council, is that if you did have a single home and there was a redevelopment on a 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 square foot lot, it's feasible to get 3 units on that lot. That's increasing your housing stock from one single family house to a duplex or a triple decker, and the ADUs separate from this, maybe another avenue to deal with that. So that is increasing our stock. I think the way that this portrays to me is if the council decides that they're going to go, or the group's going to decide that they're going to go more than 15 units per acre, we're talking about really, really expensive, complicated, much larger buildings. So I think that, that's where the character issue comes in that I think Councilor Frangillo just pointed out about vision. What do people want on Dean Ave? What do you think they want on Milliken, Ruggles, some of the other feeder streets, Cottage? We know what's there now. Do we want that to stay? And what's feasible for the future? Is a 40 or 35 unit complex feasible? I think Joe Halligan was here earlier, several meetings ago, and articulately tried to explain all of the costs. You know, buying up 3 single-family lots.
Yep.
He's not wrong. He's correct. That's going to cost somebody $2 million.
Yeah, just for
Maybe.
the, just for the land.
Just for the land. You know, I mean, and that's just I'm just thinking of an average home right now is about $500,000. That's 3 houses on Ruggles, Milliken. That's $1.5 million right up front. And I think Joe's model, I wish he had written it all down and everybody could hand it out, right? Like a spreadsheet. But I just want to go back to the staff piece that had it. That's why the 3-unit piece was missing in our bylaw.
Yeah.
Because that might be a way to still increase units, gather a little more density. But I think the question before the group is, with MBTA communities, this may not become a reality up here for a long time. That may be okay too. I'm not saying that that's bad, but I just wanted to point out the triple-decker concept or the 3-unit concept, because that does go from mostly, as Brian pointed out, it's a lot of single-family houses. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie, for reminding us that. I mean, there's all these pieces, right, that we're trying to put together, I think, and it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to remember everything. Beth.
Thank you. Brian, thanks for your diagram, it's very helpful. Came into the meeting tonight with one thought, and now I have a whole bunch of other ones, so. So
That's why we do it.
what do we do then, Jamie? You know, we need to meet the MBTA communities, and is it the end of this month that we had to put in what we plan to do to meet some requirements, or?
We have an action plan, which
Okay.
was really just a timeline, pretty much, that we're going to change zoning before the end of a certain timeline, and that's been done, so.
So if we've met that requirement, do we technically have another year before we have to make any more milestones, or what's our next deadline for MBTA communities?
We put down our action plan that by the end of the 2023 calendar year, that we would have a submittal to them, and, you know, they would have approved, so. In reality, we'd actually have another year after that. But if we sit back and we say, oh, we got, you know, almost 2 years to do something, then really nothing will get done for a year and a half. So
Not what I'm saying, no, not what I'm saying.
give 'em too
But
much
my
time.
So we
question
get to the
is-
end of the
not what I'm
2023
saying.
for that purpose, yes.
That's not what I'm saying, but I guess my kind of question is then, to think about the vision and knowing that, you know, we have to do, it's a law. It's not like we can't do anything. We have to do something to meet the MBTA communities. We have to do some sort of zoning. We have to figure it out. It's not like we can just say, nope, don't want to do it. We
Right.
have to do it.
Yes.
So what is the vision? What do we want to see on the Dean Aves, you know, in the, you know, the downtown areas, the R5s? Do we want to see larger buildings? In my opinion, I'm getting the sense from a lot of people is no. You know, Councilor Frangillo, do we want to do the bare minimum? I think if you ask some people, their answer, if you're living on Dean Ave, is probably yes. They probably want to see their residential neighborhoods stay, you know, less dense. But yes, we have to meet that minimum of the density requirements of the 15 units. So in my opinion, what are we trying to zone for? I think the MBTA community's requirements of the 15 units an acre. That's my opinion. What everyone else thinks, you all have your own opinions too, and we need to come to some consensus, I understand. So do we want to wait 2 years to make a decision? No.
No.
But, you know,
That we can agree on.
I definitely don't want to do that, but that's how I feel. You know, I did come into the meeting with another thought. After the last meeting, I didn't think we were going to get anywhere, so had another thought about maybe we compromise and, you know, come up with a little bit higher density. But Brian, this diagram has kind of changed my opinion on that. I think staying with what we have proposed is maybe an option. And looking at the inclusionary zoning, you know, I went off and did a lot of research, found a whole bunch of examples of 10% minimums of, you know, 10 units is a pretty standard requirement for 10 units. And then, you know, thought about the 3 families and thinking maybe I'm okay with, you know, the way it is right now and you know, general, or not, we don't have it, but a general residential 5, and commercial 1, or what is it we're proposing, sorry.
Yeah, general resident 1, 5, and C, and
Yeah.
commercial 1.
But I think expanding it into single-family 4, even our Franklin Farrell proposal indicates looking at it as I think it says by special permit rather than by right. Personally, I think, if we want to look at single-family 4, maybe it's something we explore a little bit further in the master plan process. Is the Franklin Farrell really, I think the vision for that was, focusing on the commercial one, general residential 5 and.
GR5.
Yeah, I think that just, it's a really big zone, so maybe kind of keeping that out of it for now, so that's my opinion right now.
So just to clarify, your opinion is that we should be thinking about the MBTA community for GR5 and C1.
Well, yes, because I think that's what's being presented in front of us, right? And then the 3 families, I think, is completely separate, but I think
3 family is like the
keeping
next
that
thing.
out of, just putting it all out there right now.
Okay.
Moving along.
Okay.
So,
Um, So I was going to go to Greg, but Kobe has a clarifying question. Is that okay, Fee? Okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
It's a quick one, thank you. It's my understanding that when we calculate the 15 units per acre, that's units per gross acreage, and gross acreage includes, as this says, all buildable and unbuildable property areas like public roads, ponds, land that a public library sits on, public roads being the biggest. So my fear is that, right, if we've just presented 15 units per buildable land parcel, then we end up well under 15 if we have to include the roads.
I'm going to clarify a couple of things. First of all, we have MAPC doing the work for us on this. Our own GIS department is actually doing calculations also in parallel. And I have a very preliminary draft, Mason, maybe notes, if you will, say that. And I just wanted to go to one of them. MAPC is thinking that by making the multifamily by right opposed to where it's special permit, whatever, basically what we're talking about, we can come up with over 2,400 housing units in those 3 districts.
Okay.
And we're required to have 1,883.
Right.
So I do understand what you're saying, and some of the, for instance, they say the district acre denominator, 38 acres. I mean, and then parcels are only 31 acres. And I have about 150 questions for MAPC. So, but until we go through that, probably the next meeting we may be able to present some information.
Okay,
at that time.
right.
But it seems as though that we're on target with what we're trying to do, I think, and that we will meet their requirements. And I guess that's what I really should say right now, because as you say, I got a lot of red marks on the whole document that they gave me, which we need to discuss in detail with them. I believe I have a meeting tomorrow with Amy and MAPC actually to talk to them about.
Okay.
Yeah, that was helpful. When you say MAPC, you mean MAPC, not DHCD? This is MAPC, like helping us
Metropolitan Area Planning Council, our regional planning agency.
as a helpful.
They're a consultant on the Franklin Farrell, and they have. We asked them to do these calculations with us, and to, and they're more than willing, because they're figuring they're gonna have really 100 communities they're gonna have to do it with. So, we're leading the way with them right now.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Frangillo, for that question. I was going to actually ask that too, and then I was thinking about how we have the downtown commercial in there as well, and that's 20 by right.
20 by right.
20 by right, and so we.
In the upper stories, not.
Yeah, so that's
Correct.
kind of, that kind of raises our average a little bit. I was really concerned about that, and I know that you're doing what is right, I guess I should say. You're trying to do what's right. We don't have all the information,
Right.
and but thank you for that answer and that question. Greg Rondo.
Yeah, actually, I just had from the previous meeting, I spoke with a few different people, and I guess there was some back and forth on trying to come to a conclusion. We can adjust that 2750 number if we'd like, right?
You can adjust it until
Yeah,
it's
Yeah.
actually,
so as an example, I was just feeling it out. Certain people wanted a lower number, certain people wanted a higher number. I would probably recommend 1 unit per 2,500 square feet. Comes down on one, comes up on the other, splits the difference for everybody, makes it a little bit more manageable. And then with the units, I think we still hold our 10% in starting for the inclusion at 10 units as well. Those are pretty sound numbers across the state. I think those are good numbers to work from. And Brian, yeah, your schematic for the layout, I mean, that was spot on, gives you room for adjustment with this. I think this is definitely a workable plan, and if you go in the 2,500 range, this plan's still doable. So you can make it work, actually.
yeah.
By tying potentially 2 parcels, 3 parcels together, you gotta also remember, we're at an artificially inflated real estate market right now.
Right.
So numbers are gonna come down. So you're not spending 600 grand for a house that's valued at 380 in the real market. You gotta understand that. You know, visionary, 5 years from now, we've been through, this town's been through 4 building cycles already. That number is gonna come down, okay? It's only artificially inflated right now. And the numbers are coming down, interest rates are going up, construction costs are going up, guys are gonna sharpen their pencils. They're paying big money right now, but they're having to pay big money. But a good developer, a good builder will do his numbers first and then approach the board or boards with a project, projecting the market down the road. So that's just my take. I've been in the business for almost 40 years, so I get it and I see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. So 2,500 per is how many units per
I think
acre?
approximately about
16.
16 or
16?
17.
Yeah,
17?
for that 40,000, it would be exactly 16 units. So you get that
Gives
one
a little
more.
bit of buffer in there for
If we went to 2250, it would be 18. If we went to 2, it would be 20.
Okay.
Okay. No, he answered my question. I was just gonna ask, but, because you brought up a lower number last week, and that raises it to 18.
Last meeting,
and a half. Last meeting.
I said 2,000.
2,000.
That would make 20 on
That
a
would make it
40,000
even
square
20.
foot building.
Yeah.
And Kobe, you said, if I recall, 23?
He didn't talk about this. He
No,
talked
I didn't talk
about
about
That was
that.
for
inclusion of
We didn't
stuff.
talk about that.
Okay.
I'm just trying to pull us together and
Yep.
come to a conclusion so we can move on.
I'm with you on this one.
You have I think Kobe, do you have another question? Does
I
anybody have
a
another
comment on
question
that.
or a comment?
I have a comment.
Kobe?
Is it possible to share to look at some examples of parcels currently existing in Franklin that are denser than 2750? I have them pulled up. Would it be possible to just look at them all together? Or is there an easier way to share them?
I'm sorry, I misunderstood. You have something?
I have them pulled up. Yeah.
Do you want
You
to
want
bring it
Zoom?
over?
I guess.
If he's on Zoom.
Yeah,
we
it's
can
okay.
share
I mean, I don't.
You guys want to see it?
Screen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if he's on Zoom. Jamie will work right on it.
You've already been evaluated, Jamie. You're doing good. Don't worry about it.
He could have stayed home tonight.
I know, so if there's other parcels that are higher density, I guess the question is like, do we want all of them to be higher density, right? That's what Brian,
Absolutely, yeah.
that was Brian's point that he brought up. Oh, Brad has a question too. So while we're trying to do this, why don't you come on up and ask your
I'm
question?
about to get on. Yeah.
Tell him how you'd work out
Name, address.
2,500.
You don't hear what I really think, but that's a different story.
Go ahead, tell
Right
us.
on camera,
All
Brad.
right, here we go.
It's okay, you can make lots of friends.
Yeah,
Or not.
that's up to me. So Brad Chaffee, Caver Property Group, so all this size development that we're talking about, kind of the 10, 12, 15 unit, that's what we did. Most of you guys know that. So I think what Brian said earlier is something that, if you look at what's actually been built, General Residential 5, right? All the units, over how long? You brought up the one that was 7 units. That's what we built. So technically right now we have the largest development in General Residential 5 in the history. Maybe the world's smallest pedestal. But, I mean, that's the reality of how hard it is to piece these things together, the sizes of them. So no matter what you change on this, I think you have to stay to the 3 families and duplexes. That's the only thing that's ever going to be built. That's it, period.
That's right.
You're never going to see a 15 unit, maybe in 100, like, so we can change the density and do that, it doesn't make a difference. That's real reality. So now you break it down, let's go to downtown, right? Other than Marini, who built in 2007, he had, 24 units, or maybe 22 units or something. Call it 40 units or 50 units in the downtown. Before him, I don't really know other than the same thing, 3 families, duplexes that have been built. After that, we put up 12, permit 18, and then there was one on Summer Street for 8, I think, or 9. So now you're talking 25 units in 15 years, right? And we have I've been piecing these things together, whether it's gonna work out for me, I'll tell you in 15 years, but that's how hard that is, right? So we're talking about how many square feet, this number's going up. So again, I think the only person that's ever built anything in 15 years down there other than that. So it's that hard, we're just gonna make it harder so we're not gonna get anything. So if that's the plan, then that's all it's gonna do. This is separate from affordable housing. I'm just talking density. So I think that's just where I'm struggling, is this is so far in between as it is.
But I think it's not, it's like as by right, it's not like you can't go for higher than that.
I guess you can ask for anything, right? I can go to ZBA, right? You can ask for anything you want.
Yeah.
Can I just-
I'm gonna go to
Okay,
Beth,
that's fine.
okay? Because she's had her hand up.
Yep.
So Beth.
Absolutely.
Just for clarification, and Brian or Jamie, maybe you can answer this, but it's not a matter of the number we're choosing right now, it's that we have to do this, right? So whether a developer wants to buy parcels in the downtown DC zoning district or C1 or residential 5, this zoning is something we're required to do. So whatever number we choose, whether a developer can actually do it or not, is, in my opinion, we have to do it regardless, because the MBT communities is something we have to zone for, right?
Through you, yes. But
Yes.
But, I mean,
The
hopefully
staff
we'll get
proposal that
hopefully
was-
we'll get a developer to do something, but.
But it's correct. So the answer to your question is yes. There's, of course, a caveat. What Brad just said is totally true, in my view. Right now, we have mostly, as Brian pointed out before, a lot of single-family parcels. So if you look at the zoning that was proposed, you're offering now a 3-family, or because of the 5 and over qualification, you're going to get a lot of duplexes. But I think that as a community where you're balancing this very, very challenging environment with development, not only with what Greg just said, which again is completely true about interest rates and costs and risk, but also the emotional feelings that people have. Look right out here along East Central, all the way down to downtown, right? Whether it was the one on East Central in downtown, or whether it was Taj Estates or across the street, you have 3 different sized housing complexes there, right? So Kobe's shared a screen, but that's why the staff went with the 3-family, but also the 4-family now is by right, okay, which is probably realistic. Both the 3-family and the duplex models actually could yield some projects and some units, but 5 or more, you now trigger the inclusionary zoning piece, where if a builder does sharpen the pencils and do the numbers, which I do think that will happen at some point, maybe not in 2 years or 4 years or whatever, but eventually markets will change, and maybe you do get a proposal where you can get something more closer to this. I think where the zoning, to your question, Beth, right now, and you can do 40 by special permit. And the question is, if you go to 20, on this model here, do you want 4-story buildings on Dean Ave and Cottage Street? That's a question for all of you and the public in their reaction to the buildings that have gone along East Central Street. So the question then is, do you want to be dealing with special permits between 15 units by right and 20 or 25 or 30 or 40 which you can now do right now. So the staff proposal is intended to thread the needle between all of these issues I think there is a portion of the public that is looking to de-densify to some degree for a lot of reasons. But yet you're still increasing density on some of these. You're just doing it at a more incremental pace. And I think the big advantage is, the big part of the zoning that's changed, Beth, is that now those 15 units under this model are now by right. They are not by special permit, which quite frankly is probably, and I'm not going to speak for Brad or any other developer, but on the hand, seriously, you're getting 15 units by right, which is no special permit, which is easier for a builder, but you are subjected to the 10% requirement of inclusionary zoning, so you're also providing the community civic thing of having 2 deeded affordable units. So the real ultimate trade-off in the zoning is that you're now encouraging the 3 and 4 family without any affordable complex, which are realistic, and you're also dealing with, you're giving now a by right under MBTA communities, but you're also trading basically for a 10% affordability requirement, which seems to be a modest step forward for everybody. Thank you. Did I miss anything?
Thank you, Jamie.
Right?
That's fine.
Yeah.
I think
I
the
think
by
it-
right,
Makes
the
sense.
by right
Yes.
issue
Yes,
is extremely
understand.
important.
Yeah,
Nothing, as Brad was saying, nothing is getting developed because any multifamily requires a special permit.
right.
So very little is getting done. It's much costlier, obviously, to go through that process. And if you know that you can permit 10 units, 20 units on a certain parcel of land, you know you have that by right, then you do your site plan, you check on the traffic and the safety issues, and then you have design review to deal with. But in general, the process is so much easier. But if you say 40 units per acre by right, then you're in a different world.
Yeah, yeah.
You really are.
I think
And
that's what people don't want.
I just had one
Yeah,
quick
Beth has a
point.
follow-up point.
I understand 100% everything that's being said, but I guess my point is, kind of to Brad, what you're saying is, even if you take the special permit out of it, and you still have to buy the parcels and combine them, are you still going to see development, is my question, and that's my point. So regardless of what we choose for a density down there, you still have the same hurdle, is that you're still gonna have to combine these parcels. That's what I'm just trying to say, and I'm not trying to be, Debbie Downer here, that, I think it's
Yeah.
hard to pick something that's gonna work, because regardless, you're still gonna have that hurdle, right? Okay.
But you
Yeah.
gotta remember, you look
Yeah.
around surrounding towns, it's already been happening for the past 5-10 years. Buying 2-3 parcels and combining them and putting buildings up. You see it a lot in Natick, Wellesley, Newton,
Yep. Needham.
all the
Yeah.
higher ends. They're spending that much more money for that piece of property on the raw end. No, they're into it for 1.5, 1.6 on the front end per project, per piece. They're
Yeah.
into it for $3.5 million on the front end.
Just for the land.
And they're making
Yeah.
it work, and that's what, Franklin has the same capability, not as much wealth as that, but the return on investment is still here. So
Okay.
if they do their numbers and they sharpen the pencils, the numbers will work, because they know they're gonna get it on the back end.
So hopefully we picked the right number then.
Yeah,
Well, I think-
That's why I'm thinking the compromise of the 25, come down, come
So-
up a little bit and split the difference, and we move forward.
Yeah, I like that, Greg. I think, like, one of the things I think about is that through the Franklin for All project, we found that people like Brad's building that has the 12 units in it in the commercial, right? I mean, people like that look. That is okay with most people. They want the 2, 3 family, 4 family housing units that we've already talked about. Those are the kind of things that people want. And I just forgot my other train of thought. But it is difficult. I know that Brad's the only one that's actually built these things down there, I think our purpose is to create more, maybe not affordable but more medium income. And if it costs too much for the builder to build something, then those units are gonna be very costly to the people who are gonna live in them. And that's, we wanna have a more different stock of housing. And so that's one of the things we need to think about too. But I agree that we need to move on the MBTA community, because we need the Mass Works grants to get other stuff done here in Franklin. But I think Counselor Jones had a,
No, I was actually pointing on Bruce.
oh, Bruce, sorry, Bruce.
Brad took the time to come. Is it okay to ask him a question?
Is that okay with you, Brad?
Brad,
Yeah, come
tell
on.
us how that commercial works out in those apartments you built uptown.
Doesn't work great.
It doesn't work at all from what I understand.
I guess if you're getting to the point, Mr. Arnchard, as far as mixed use goes with that thing, in today's climate, it's very difficult. It's small business, right? Which is leading of all downtowns. So, which is very challenging. So I would say, when we have the Allstate, I'm actually in the process of renting that out right now. And it has been a challenge, especially COVID and stuff like that, but it's all small business based, small square footages, mom and pop, which is great. We need that. It's very important downtown. But that's also very challenging.
Yes.
And we have to work that into our development to make us get into better zoning, because I believe in C1, we have to look for general residential 5 unless it's mixed use. So now you're pushing that unit that's very difficult to rent on the market, which is necessary, but it's not at my discretion as part of that trade-off. But I think the units are important. So maybe that's something, I guess if we're going with that, that's something we don't, maybe we can take that component out of that and allow it to be more multifamily instead of having that mixed use.
When we get to that zone.
Yeah, sorry. All right.
That's a good point.
But
No,
part
I
of,
just wanted you to get it out there.
Yeah.
part of the growth of the downtown was the mixed-use facilities that we were all aiming for.
Yes.
The whole thing was
Yep.
to get the downtown to get revitalized, and
Right.
that's what it's all about.
Yep.
Now, we see these projects come through in the very small area in the commercial end. Maybe enlarging the square footage on the first floor deck so you can get somebody else in. So you're not limited to one particular tenant that only fills that 500 square feet. Get it into 1,000, 1,500, 1,800, so maybe a little bit larger firm with 3 or 4 people can actually utilize that space too. So it's another option, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking around like anybody.
I pulled up.
Oh, so Kobe pulled up his pictures of, so what is, this is
Yeah, so this
higher
is-
density?
Yeah, all of these units that we're about to look at are, because I'm honing in specifically on this number of no more than one dwelling unit per X number of square feet per lot area. And these are all, I believe there are 93 parcels within our downtown that are denser than 2750. And they're not that scary. And this is my best understanding with less tools than the planning department. But these are homes that you drive by every day.
Do you know what the density is in those homes?
I know that they're between 2750 and 2000 because we'll get to the 2000.
What district is that we're looking at right now?
Yeah, these are all
That looks-
relatively downtown.
Yeah, that
So
looks
you
like
got,
we're
so this one's
downtown.
GR5,
Yeah,
right? That's behind DCD.
that's Alpine.
That's Alpine. Garfield
I like
is
that
GR5 as well. Worsted might be SR5.
Does
Yeah.
Greg know?
Or sorry, yeah. But they're all within those downtown, with the exact parcels that we're talking about, Church Street. I don't know. I do think that this is helpful in terms of,
Yeah, that's key.
this is
Main
less than
Street.
2750.
That's Main
This is
Street.
what we're talking about when we're talking about less than 2750. That's GR5.
Yeah, come on.
Sorry, I'm gonna take the mic over.
Nope.
Just a clarification. Since we're increasing the actual square footage you need, decreasing the density, does that get rid of the special permit and allow it to be by right now? Is that the trade-off for it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yes, Brian.
And you can get
Yes.
a special permit beyond that, yeah. I do think that's key. So we still are going to be allowing projects on special cases beyond that, but we do want to welcome good, viable products and not make it more difficult to build. And so that's, we're calling, what are we allowing by right? Are we okay with a building like this being built by right in Franklin? I am. That provides housing units to people like me within walking distance of our downtown. It supports our businesses. It provides more revenue to the town. and it's a beautiful building. Yeah, I don't know. I found this helpful in terms of understanding what these look like. And then I pulled up some that are denser than 2,000, and they're still not that scary. Yeah.
Oh, Jamie, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm confused. I don't think anyone's scared of these. I think people are scared of that.
Yeah.
I think the fourth floor on top of that is what people are scared about.
Yeah.
So what you're showing, Councilor Frangillo, is actually closer to what the staff proposal bylaw was intended to do, which is to basically say 3 and 4 families, yes, which is basically, I think, what's being shown, mostly. You know, I can't tell exactly, I can't tell.
Right.
And I understand the setbacks maybe are not as much, maybe that's what you're referencing, but I guess that's what we're trying to encourage. So I think, I'm seeing heads bob, so I'm guessing we all agree.
So this parcel that we're looking at, this is on Main Street.
Right.
That's denser than 2,000 square feet per unit.
Councilor Frangella, do you have, if you look at the assessor's card with the address, you can see how many units it is? Do you have that information to understand?
I do, yeah, and I can
Yeah.
get those numbers up. If you have questions about any specific one, I can pull them up quick. I just don't want to. I'm sharing my screen, so I don't want to jump around.
These are probably 10,000 square foot lots that have maybe 4 or 5 units on them.
Right.
Everybody's trying to bring
Right.
it to the point.
Fairly dense.
Right.
You know,
Right,
we're-
and
we're
so-
talking- We're talking builder's acre of 40,000, everybody's, we can put 20 in it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So this is the exact type of house that was presented, but you might not need, if you have a minimum, you might not get a 40,000 square foot lot, but we might still like that very building, even on a smaller lot, because they exist all around us, and they are part of what we love about our downtown. And it's why I feel comfortable bringing the by right number, much less than 2,750. I'd be okay with 2,500, but I would prefer a 2,000 square foot. Again, this is even denser than what I'm saying right now, and I still think that these are exact types of units that we would want to allow in our downtown. But I feel like it's helpful to visualize, what some of these are. Denser than 2,000,
Chair.
denser than 2,000.
Chair, can I ask you a question? Can we do a little straw poll? And
I was
move
just
some
gonna-
things forward?
Yeah, I think this is by right, right? It's not like they can't go denser. I think there's other things we want to work on as well, but I think this is a really good start, and we're actually at a point now where maybe we all agree it should be 2,500. By right.
I'll make a motion that we approve it at 2,000 square feet, just to get the discussion going. Maybe we can.
Second.
All right, there's a second discussion.
Make it, motion to make it 2,500, and it's an equal compromise
Have
for
to be an
everybody.
amendment.
We have to go through this first. There's a motion made and a second. We have to go through discussion and approve or disapprove the motion first before we take a second motion.
Okay, is there any other discussion? That's what I said. No?
So 2,000,
So the-
2,000's on the floor?
2,000's on the floor.
What, we're just talking square footage. We're not talking about the percentage.
That's right.
What,
What
say,
percentage
can you
of
finish
coverage? You wanna
that?
throw that in there now, Joe?
Can you finish
No,
that?
he's talking about the 10%.
Oh, okay.
That's the next thing.
Like, just
You
like-
guys have already voted on that.
That's not got anything to do with that.
No, we didn't vote on that one yet.
Okay, all right. So there is a motion and a second for 2,000. Right?
Square feet per unit.
Square feet per unit.
In GR5.
All right, so we're going to vote on that. All right?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
No.
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 All right, so
Roll
wait,
call it.
there's 2 ayes.
I think you should roll call it.
Roll
Roll
call?
call it.
Should we roll call it?
Oh, we got a roll
Are you going to
call,
write
you
it
know.
down?
I am.
Okay. Hunchard,
Yes.
Rondo,
No.
Wheeling,
No.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Frangillo,
Yes.
Jones. Chair, no.
3-4.
Yeah, it didn't
Okay.
pass.
All right.
Make a motion that we go to 2,250 square feet.
You beat me to it, Bruce. Yes.
Yeah, I know.
That's,
I gotta move up the ladder. I've been
Second.
doing this a long time.
Second.
I know how to move a
2250.
meeting along.
So
yeah.
if you make it
2250.
24, you're probably gonna deal.
Yep, thank you, Bruce, beat me to it.
All right, so then I guess you
Who
seconded
seconded that?
that.
I did.
Okay,
Glenn seconded it?
Yeah.
Glenn seconded it. I think because he was gonna say it too.
Yep.
All right, so,
Well, that changes the vote.
is there a discussion? Discussion, anyone? On 2250?
I'm all set. I think that makes the developers or whoever coming forward, you know, it's a trade-off, obviously, from 1,000 square feet to 2,250, but knowing that they don't have to go for a special permit, that will lighten the load.
Right, so this is
Yep.
just by right. It doesn't mean you can't go higher.
Yep.
Or higher, right? Higher.
Yeah, we're under the
Sometimes I'm
special
like,
permit.
I say it backwards, but, okay, so this would be by right. All right, Hunchard,
Yes.
Rondo,
No.
Wehrlein,
No.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Frangillo,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Chair, yes. Okay,
One down.
all right, we're gonna take a break. Okay, so, all right, so, now,
Could I ask for
Bruce.
clarification on something?
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, not Brian, I'm
Brian,
sorry.
I know, you know.
I need
you
some
know the
water,
way
hold
it
on.
is.
Starts with a B, you were close.
So if, based on
Brad.
43,560 square foot acre, it's 19.4 units per acre, okay? Up to that point, after that, it would be by special permit. Is that for general residential 5 only, or C1 also?
I thought we were just talking about general residential 5.
That's why I'm clarifying. I
Well,
don't-
that's what the memo here says we're talking about.
It's
We
my
can move
understanding
on.
that it was note 3.
Right, no, 3.
Which is GR5, C1,
Oh, C1 also?
yeah, just GR5 and C1, but not the single
Okay.
family.
Yeah, it's my understanding it's GR5 and C1.
Okay.
That's what
Is
I'm
that correct,
clarifying.
Brian?
Well, that's why I'm clarifying. I just want to make sure.
Okay. Okay,
Yes.
all right. Next. Where are we now, Jamie?
So, are we, does the
Okay.
EDC plus, do they think that this use table, as currently drafted, should be moved to the council? Or are we still discussing the framework and the numbers that are in the proposal?
Yeah.
I think.
We are.
I think we are still discussing,
Yeah. Can
Um,
we discuss coverage?
Inclusionary.
coverage isn't on this,
Okay.
but I have that here. That's I think that will probably be maybe an EDC thing. But I think what we need to do is talk about, note 4. Is that correct?
Yes.
Does everybody agree with me on that?
Note 4.
Note 4 is next. That's another thing we talked about last time. We couldn't quite agree on, and we were really close. So
Greg wasn't here, so that's.
that is all multifamily development with, now it says 5 or more housing units. And that number is what we want to
Inclusionary
discuss. Yes, this is for inclusionary zoning.
I would like to propose, through the chair, changing that number to 10 or more housing units.
Can we make it, is that a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we change all multifamily developments with 10 or more housing units are required to address the affordable housing requirements in section 185-51.
Okay, we have a motion
A second.
and a second.
Clarification on
second
the
it.
motion? Does it mean that you don't have to do it at 5, you wait till you hit 10 and then the
Right.
10th one?
10%.
Okay.
10
Yes.
kicks in.
Yeah, it's 10%.
Yes.
I never agreed with that, the 5th
No.
one happening.
It's
10 at 10.
10 at 10.
10 and 10.
It's
Yeah,
kind of,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, so after
Yeah.
the 9th one, you built the 10th one, it's gotta be affordable.
Bingo.
Jamie?
Through you, Madam Chair, this is my only statement on this. Whatever people decide, you know how I feel about that. I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that it's unlikely to get 10. So people will avoid the 10% requirement, and they'll do 8, 9, 7, 6. This isn't a critique. This isn't an insult.
Yeah.
It's just simply acknowledging that if you're trying to build deeded affordable units under the inclusionary zoning bylaw, okay, and 10, by the way, is a common number in a lot of bylaws. This is not uncommon among a lot of cities and towns. Just want to point out, if you're trying to increase affordable housing stock downtown in GR5, you are unlikely to get the result anytime soon.
What
Thank
would you
you.
suggest as a number then?
5 or more. And the reason why I suggest it is because you have the triple decker in here, theoretically, assuming everybody's comfortable with that. You have the 4-family in here, which Kobe just showed us some of those parcels in downtown. I can't say 6 might be a good number, 7 might be. I just want to raise the issue so the committee is aware, so that when you start seeing 8-unit buildings pop up on 20,000 square feet and no affordability kicks in, people know that, that dynamic is very real. How likely, I don't know. Hypothetical, I obviously don't know. If I could predict the future, I wouldn't be sitting here. But in all seriousness, I think that's a conversation. Brian, I don't know if you have any thoughts. I just want to make sure people are aware.
Yeah.
So that later on, if the unintended consequence comes, everyone is aware. Or if the questions come up later at another planning board or council meeting, that folks are aware.
And
Thank
you. You still have the floor, Beth.
Having gone through the process we went through the last round here, and seeing that we got nowhere with getting a number here.
Right.
I'm perfectly happy sticking with the 5, but it seems as though nobody was going to ever go anywhere with 5.
Right.
That 10 seems like something people are willing to
I
go
agree.
with.
Yeah.
I agree.
That's why I'm presenting 10. Would love to stick with the 5.
Yeah.
But I think if we want to get something somewhere, maybe 10 is the way to go, or maybe 8. I don't know if somebody wants to make a motion to change to 8. Anybody willing to do that? Amend it,
I was thinking 8 myself. 'cause
right?
it's-
Make an amendment to it for 8?
Withdraw your motion, just make the motion for
Well, I
it.
have
Right.
to withdraw my second.
I
He has a
withdraw the
second.
motion.
There you go, Beth.
Was there
No,
a second?
she
Glenn
can't.
did.
I have to do it first. I withdraw myself.
Make a motion for.
Now you're going to withdraw your
Withdraw
motion
my
for 10.
motion.
Okay.
It's back to an open.
Okay, so now we have,
Make a motion
Open table.
for all multifamily developments with 8 or more housing units.
Well, I hate to be rude, but Mr. Council Frangillo had his hand up prior to the motion.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
it's okay.
His hand's up all night.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I was going to vote. I was
We were still in
going to,
open discussion on that last
Sorry.
motion, so.
Yep.
My apologies.
yeah, that's not rude.
All right, cool.
That's not rude.
That's not
Glenn.
rude.
That's helpful.
It's my clerk's job.
You're
as a
being
clerk.
helpful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Kobe.
Yeah, so there was a survey done in 2019 of inclusionary zoning policies across Massachusetts. At the time, there were 140 municipalities with inclusionary zoning. 60% of those communities created 0 new affordable units. Why? Because if you start with a number too low, then it's not that they get built 1 in 5, that 5 unit just never gets built. I would rather have more units built. Either way, you're getting no affordable under 10. I would rather have more units built than to hold everyone hostage and lose out in the end. This is why we sat down with developers and actually calculated what it is that made a project financeable. The number is much, much closer to 18, 20. I would be okay with 16. I would be maybe okay with 12. I'd be pushing for 10 because I'd be really worried about losing the very types of projects that we all just agreed we want to encourage downtown. It would be entirely the wrong direction to go beyond that and be just like all these other communities that just got no new affordable units and just froze development in their downtown.
The motion.
Counselor Jones.
The floor is open for a motion if somebody.
Make a motion for.
Well,
No,
I
no,
called
no,
on, I called
that
on
was part of
Counselor
his last
Jones.
discussion. There's no motion on the table. You can open up a new motion.
Up to the chair to determine
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
she wants to proceed.
So one of the things I just want to reiterate is that through the Franklin for All project, we found that people really like things like that are 12, up to 12, maybe even more. They just don't know it. That they like them. They like that building, the Birch that holds the Birchwood Bakery, and that. I mean, maybe that has 20 in it. I don't know, but I know that people like that building, and that is okay with them in the downtown area and C1. And so I look at inclusionary zoning as a tool to get the kind of buildings that we want to see built. Don't take this personally, Brad, but I think that builders a lot of times think of inclusionary zoning as a punishment against them, and they don't want it, and they're not gonna want to do it. So I agree that I don't think it should be 5, because I want to see up to 8, 9, maybe even 10 units built down there. I want more built because we just need places for people to live, and so we don't want to stagnate. We don't want to stagnate our new growth. We really need to have growth so that we have revenue. And so this is really a tough number to pick, right? But I also want to remind everybody that if it does stagnate things, we can change it. I mean, that's the beauty of Franklin's government, is that we can actually meet and say, okay, this wasn't right, you guys. It's too restrictive. It's not restrictive enough. Whatever it is, we can change it. And so that's kind of what's going on in my brain right now. But I'm going to call on Councilor Jones so that he can say what he's thinking.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too have been in construction for over 35 years. When it comes down to the affordability part of this, in other words, having 1 unit out of 10, or having 1 unit out of 5, or having 1 unit out of 16, or whatever the number is, developers are going to do their best, and I kind of echo Councilor Frangella's point on this, is that developers are going to do their best to stay below that threshold. Why? Because they're just simply not going to make any money. They're going to do their best to avoid having to reach that limit where it's going to start to have to incorporate that inclusionary zoning aspect. It's not really so much of the policies we set as it is how much the developers, A, can afford, and B, they want to make off of these projects. And I agree with you in the sense that I would like to see some building built. But if we set it to 5, we're never going to see a 5-unit building downtown. If we set it to 16, the likelihood of seeing a 16-unit building is also unlikely. I think we do need to stay relatively middle ground around the 10, because 10 is kind of the standard 10% affordable of most things we've been doing, and just stick with that number. And if we do find out down the road that 10% is either too high or too low, based on what's being developed and based on what the developers want to do, we can make that change. But for now, as part of just simply A, moving things along, and B, coming up with what's been the standard, I think 10% sounds like a reasonable thing. Because 16, 5, 10, all right, if you want, I'll make it 11. That sounds really cool. But we need to
Is that a motion?
We need to make, no, I'm going to make a motion for 10 and just leave it at 10.
We did, and it
It was
got shut
closed.
down, but.
There was no seconding on Beth's 8.
There's no second on Beth's 8.
Kobe,
So
yeah,
I
right.
I second the 10 units.
You second the 10.
Yeah.
So the 10% at 10,
Yep.
okay?
Because in my point would be that we went from 10, and I wrote down 8 to make it feasible. You also have to bear in mind the parcels of property you're thinking about to build on.
Right.
So you may not get a 15 unit or a 20 unit on some of these parcels,
Bingo.
but yet you still want some affordability in there, so that's why I said maybe the 8 could trigger some of these parcels to get redeveloped with affordability factor built into it. You go much higher, you have to go search out larger parcels to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, Jamie, they're gonna dodge it no matter what, in terms of whether it's 15, 20, 30, they're gonna stay below that level. So I think a compromise, like Glenn was saying,
8 or 10, and I'm in agreement with the 10 minutes as we
With the
originally
10?
started with. Yep.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the motion and the second for 10?
I got a question. After the 10, where does the second one come in, on number 20? Or are you gonna go back to your more than halfway?
15,
think
I
it's
think it's
15.
More than
15.
halfway.
It is.
Who decides that? Who made that up?
The bylaw.
Math.
It's in the
The one
bylaw.
that you voted
Math.
on, and everybody voted on to move to the council, had it in there, the round up.
Okay.
Yep.
And it would round down too if it was 14.
Right, so
So
up
if
to
it's
14, it would
units,
still be
you'd have
one.
one. Right.
Yeah. Brad, would you like, do you want a quick comment?
I'm gonna make this quick. So, the problem is when we blanket this, you have rentals and you have sales,
Mhm.
right, for multifamily. Those are very, very different worlds.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna talk about sales. The 12 unit I built downtown, those are condos, people buy those. The 17 I have approved that I'm gonna build next to that, those are condos for sales. 10%, so out of 12, it's 1 unit, 1.2, right? That project doesn't move forward, simple as that. The difference is, the sale price that you get from the state into what you can sell for location, for what the amenities are in the units. Brian mentioned this in a couple meetings ago. People will pay for that. The state doesn't recognize it. It's based on bedrooms, right? So if I sell a unit for 650 grand and I get 350, that's it. If I get 700, 800 because people love it and we put more in and we build everything as beautiful as we can, it doesn't matter, right? That crushes the project. Because you might have to buy a better piece of land. And they said, hey, I get more units. Well, I gotta pay 800 for that piece of land now because it's in the middle of downtown, perfect location. But I can't get it because I'm locked on those units. You're lucky to go through those projects and make it on a unit or half a unit. That's what you're lucky. So you take that away, it's dead. The unit number is too small. So now that next one, I go up to 18 or 17, it's 2 units, doesn't go forward. So that's real life, that's for sale. Rents, I can have a different discussion about rentals, but we're blanketing this whole thing. And if ownership in the downtown, I can tell you people that live there, they live down there, they walk their dogs down there, they're part of the community, and then I've had one person out of those 12 for other medical circumstances leave. Everyone else in 2 years loves it, staying there. They go to Florida, they come back, they do stuff. That's what you want in downtown. You do this with affordable, and it's blanketed across all multifamilies. You're never gonna see it. You're never gonna see them. You won't get financed. They just don't make that much. And everyone's gonna blast me for saying that, 'cause I'm saying that's the bottom. That's why they haven't been built to begin with. So I know you guys have to come with a number, and it's an umbrella you're putting over multifamilies, which is the unfortunate part. I don't know if you can separate them, but I don't know if you can, but that's the sad part. So if I had to pick a number and I'm up here deciding one, I'm gonna be more on that 20 side, and you're still gonna have 2 units out of that, and you're probably still not gonna get it. So you're gonna have to have land value come way down. Something has to give. And that's not gonna happen, because the house values in Franklin, it's a beautiful place to live. The house is worth more than that. That's all I have to say.
Jamie, the uptick that we voted, has that been voted on by the council, approved?
It has not.
Okay, so it's,
They go hand, the two things go hand in hand. I understand there's some parts of it that could be done separately, but the 10% piece that was in the inclusionary zoning bylaw that moved forward, you know, obviously relates to the use table of the quantity of units, to Brad's point.
Right. Beth?
In response to Brad's comment, how does something along the lines of a payment kind of in lieu of work? So if the developer doesn't want to develop that unit, can we do something along the lines of him paying into a affordable housing fund?
So that's a great question. So Brad just said something, I think, a minute ago, among many things that were really important. But he said something of something's got to give, right? And I think that's an illustrative point. Who gives something? What is something to give? Who gives up to get 2 out of 20 affordable units? How does a builder either get it financed, lose profit, encouraged about a project? That's ultimately where the roads all align. And so is there public assistance available? I mean, that's a much more complicated discussion, but there very well may be. Maybe the Healy Driscoll administration comes out with some more housing ideas. Maybe it's the Community Preservation Act. Maybe it's the Affordable Housing Trust in town. Maybe there's some other mechanisms at which to do that. But what ultimately is, in the 40% of the 40Bs that we were talking about a moment ago, of inclusionary, well, yeah, the 60% didn't do anything. But for the 40% who did get a housing unit out of that, where would they be today without that opportunity? This is the really challenging part of the debate, right? We have to look at Brad and say, or somebody, because he's here, you know? and I'm really, really proud and happy he's stepping up and commenting on this. I think
Yeah.
we want this publicly. I think, again, I wish I had Joe's, you know, the whole list right in front of me. He said it
Me
publicly.
too.
But it was such a great model. But everybody, if you're creating a diverse housing stock for a community, if you're trying to have non-market-based situations happen, which is what we've always lent to, and I'm a pure market on housing, like I think a lot of this will come down, as Greg said. Everybody's got to kind of break a little to realize that, you know, developers are going to avoid these numbers. They are punishments. There's no question about it. Developers may have to make a little less money. You know, we're so scared of all this stuff, and it's very challenging to sit here and say, and I admitted it a minute ago, I don't know, 8, 6, 20, 50. Brad's right, sales and rentals are different. We can peel the onion back another layer and see if we can try to say, well, if it's a condo, it's this, and if it's a rental, it's this. But at the end of the day, I think we might be missing a little bit of what's also important, which is there's no affordable housing, there's nothing being built, there's very little, and there's no guarantee of any affordable units. Because as Brad pointed out, Joe pointed out, everybody, the market's going to dictate this. And one thing I would disagree with Greg really quickly is, yeah, prices may come down at some point. I think we all want to avoid the Great Depression, too. But this is a really appealing community. Housing prices ain't going to go down. So for Kobe or anyone else that's looking for a unit, it's still kind of like you're bleep out of luck. Because ultimately, there's no rule that is going to force anyone to do anything. And we're all going to avoid the inconvenient truth until finally maybe the market crashes so hard. And I don't think any of us want that.
Thank you, Jamie. I think there's also another piece to this that we've kind of forgotten, is the housing production plan and all of the incentives that are in there, the potential for a developer to put a affordable unit in a different place, and that all these incentives that Brian put together. So those are there as well. And I think we've forgotten that, right? Because those are there, and I don't think we should think that, you know, we're trying to make sure that we have things built, right? So that's the hard part. But I just want people to remember that the housing production plan has things in there just for that, for somebody like Brad. I don't want to pick on you, Brad, but you're here. So, and I thank you for I thank you for being here. I'm going to go to Greg.
So I just want to take to Jamie's comments and Brad's. I guess my point of dealing with the market, when you go look at a piece of property, you don't outright buy it. You tie it up in a P&S. You let the owners of that particular property know that you have to go to planning board, you have to go to zoning. There are certain conditions that you have to meet in order for that parcel to come together.
Mm-hmm.
But it's on the front end that needs to be done. So the financial aspect of it can be met on the negotiations on the front end with the landowner saying, look, I can only get 10 units here per the planning board as an example. I can't get the 15 that I was projecting. I can't pay you this kind of money for it. Either you're gonna accept this offer or we're gonna have to move on. But it's on the front end of the negotiations that's gonna determine if these parcels are gonna come together. If you create a hardship for yourself, you just put yourself between a rock and a hard place, projecting 15, 20 units when the zoning board or the planning board says, no, you're only getting 12. Hard luck, that you gotta meet the rules and regs. So I think the homework on the front end has to be done, and that'll dictate whether these parcels are gonna come together.
Evidently, you haven't bought any property lately.
Well,
Okay.
Bruce?
You gotta tie it up. That's, you tie it up.
Well, yeah, you can tie anything up, but there's only a certain amount of time it takes so long to get
But,
through.
but you put that in your P&S.
But it doesn't always work like
Okay,
Well-
all right, you guys, because that's kind of, I think that's sort of like a best practice sort of thing, but that's not,
I'm
What we're
just saying
talking about
it
right
can
now.
be- It can become an affordable project if it's bought that way, is what I'm getting to. So
Right.
you have a little fluff on the other end, that's all.
I get it, thank you for that. Okay,
Motion is 10.
there is a motion for 10,
And there was a second.
and there was a second. Brian has a question. That was, we were discussing that, right? Brian,
Regarding
I'm not tired.
the type of density we're talking about and the percent affordables and everything. The development concept I threw up there at 40,000 square feet, just split the parcel in half and you have 20,000 square feet, 100 feet of frontage for a minute, okay? On 20,000 square feet, at your newly proposed, was it 2,250?
2250.
2250.
2250. You can get, what, 8.89 units or something like so. It's 9 units of housing on 20,000 square feet, okay? And you don't have any affordables in it, okay? So is that good or bad? It probably depends on whether you're looking for affordable housing or not. But I just thought I'd throw that out there. That GR5 is a 10,000 square foot minimum lot. Most of them don't even, half of them aren't that big, but to develop something like this, you'd have to have at least 10,000 square feet. So, you know, the density, you're making it a little bit denser, that's fine. And if you're going, you're gonna keep pushing up the affordable, when that kicks in, with all of the small parcels in the downtown where you have to pull together, you're probably never gonna get affordable housing at all in the GR5 if you keep doing that. Or you not, and I shouldn't say never, but chances are very slim that's gonna happen. And you could have, on a half an acre, 8 or 9 units of housing on a fairly regular basis if people put piece of parcels together and do that. So just throwing it out there, vote any way you want. It's all up to you guys to do what you want to do. I just think that everybody should be aware of what you're actually voting for.
Yeah.
You're voting for a denser downtown, essentially, than denser neighborhoods around the downtown than what we were originally proposing. And you're voting for less affordable units overall in town than what we were proposing also. So that's what you want to do, go for it.
Okay, let's vote.
Thank you, Brian. I think we know that. I think we know that, and it's you know, it's a balance, right?
I got a question. How could we change that 15 to 20th one? Because it hasn't been adopted yet.
What do you mean?
Well, he said excuse me.
The
He said that we voted to up when it hits 5, you got to build an affordable. So if we're going to approve 10, that means when they hit the 15, they're going to have to build another one. But if you're going 10% for 10 units, it should be 10 and 20, not 15.
Oh, okay. You mean in the bylaw?
Yeah.
You mean in the bylaw?
Yeah,
Well, that's, so one of the things I think everybody needs to remember is that there's gonna be public hearings about these. They're gonna go to the planning board, then they're gonna come back to the town council. Everybody's gonna have another chance to talk about it. I think and then it probably might even go to the master plan committee. And so that I don't expect this to be written in stone.
You got a master plan committee?
Yeah. I don't, we're all just like.
Comment on his flinching.
And so I just want people to remember that I expect more debates about this. I'm not sure that it has to be etched in stone. I just think that we've talked about this for a long time, and we really need, I feel like we're so close to agreeing.
So we should do the roll call vote then?
And I think maybe we should just vote.
Yes. think we're at
Thank
that
you,
point.
thank you, Beth. All right, so we're gonna vote. You ready?
Yep.
On 10.
Jamie's gonna run it down.
Yes.
We're voting on 10. Bruce,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Beth,
And I'm awfully torn on this
Say
one.
present, like they do in the Congress. And time's
Seeing
up.
that I'm getting more of an opportunity to discuss at a public hearing through the planning board, I'll go with no.
with no. Okay, so we have one no so far. Patrick,
No.
Kobe,
Yes.
Yes.
Jones,
Yes.
chair says yes.
Moves. Yep, 5-2.
Wow, another one down.
Okay.
I know, it was a successful night.
No,
Yes.
another
All right,
one.
so the rest of, I am assuming then, the rest of the use schedule is okay with everyone?
No.
I was gonna say, I know there's other things we need to discuss.
So, oh, was that a joke?
No.
No,
Oh, you did have other issues?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. So I heard you
no,
correctly.
No, we
It
never
sounded
even.
like you were going on to the next agenda item. I
No.
was like, I didn't know if
No,
you
I
were
know I was
serious or
gonna, but
not.
I
My
was,
apologies.
then I was like, oh, no, we actually, there are other issues that we didn't even get to talk about last time, about the three-family,
Yep.
I believe, and Beth has some questions. And then I think I think we have the same questions, but you go first, Beth.
For the three-family, I understand the concept of by right in DC, C1, and GR5. Totally okay with that, no issues there. But I think it's in DC, right? Yes. But I would propose removing the line for it in single-family residential for by right. Our, let's see, papers, sorry.
Not Franklin for all.
Thank you. Our Franklin for all information indicates, under recommendation,
Special
number
permit.
5, create new definition in the code for three-family and allow the use by right in commercial 1 and general residential 5, and potentially by special permit in single-family 4 districts. So if we're going to consider it by special permit in residential 4, it's something I think I'm okay considering, but right now, by right in residential 4, I think this is a significantly large zoning district to be considering by right. It's, a varying densities throughout that area. I understand that, we do currently have some three families already in there. However, I just think by special permit is more the way it should be versus by right. Or just take it out altogether right now. Look at it a little bit further.
Does anyone have any other comments about what Beth just said?
No problem with it.
What was that, Bruce? Can you just,
I don't have any problem leaving it in the way it's written. Because if I'm reading it right, you need 125% of the square foot area for a single-family home. So it's going to be bigger than a normal GR4 lot, correct?
a single-family resident 4 lot? Yeah. Yeah, it has to be 25% greater than a single dwelling to have a three-family and a two-family. Greg, do you have any thoughts on that? Not yet, not yet. Counselor Sheridan,
Yeah, I like the way it is. I like the three-family, the way it is now.
you, on the use schedule?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I also ask then, if we're going to leave it as is, can we address the definitions that are in our zoning bylaw so they're consistent? Because the current definition for the single-family residential 4 does not address having 3 families. It talks about 2 families only, and that the neighborhood character and residential feel for a single-family residential 4 should be for single-family homes and 2 families.
Yeah, and also it doesn't it say a little bit about a small commercial as well in there?
I don't think so, not for single-family 4.
Okay.
Nope.
I was going to say, I looked them up after you mentioned that to me the other day. Counselor Frangillo.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. There was something that I thought at the beginning, is I think it's time for us to update that we call this single-family residential 4, a very downtown dense where we have a lot of multifamily units. Maybe it's time to call that general residential 4, and I would be fully in favor of that. Again, this is the exact type of area that we want to be slightly upzoning, slightly allowing for more units. The shift from 1 to 3 units is not drastic. It happens all the time currently in that area, and we just want to make those more welcome. There's a brand new triple family, beautiful on 5 Wachusett, right in the corner of Wachusett and Cottage. That's exactly the type of thing that we'd be allowing by right. Fully in favor of allowing by right, and I would also be in favor of making that general residential 4, if we want to make that a separate conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Through you.
Beth,
Well,
hold on.
That's all right, go ahead, Jamie, sorry.
Okay, all right. Jamie?
So what I'm hearing is, just to clarify, just so I understand, you're just trying to change the title of the term of the residential code.
I think there is a description somewhere.
There's a
So
there is a
from
description.
single-family residence to general
Yeah.
residence, is that?
Under definitions of
Right.
our zoning districts, the definition itself should be updated to reflect what we're changing for.
Mhm.
Instead of residential 4.
So it's
general
not-
residential.
Okay.
Well, I don't care
I
if
think
you
Brian's
change
just
the
looking through the
name of zone-
definition.
You don't have to
Yeah.
change the name of the zoning district.
Oh,
per
that's
se.
what I
It's
thought
just
was
the-
being proposed.
I'm not saying
That's what I
that, I'm
thought
just
too.
saying
He is,
update the
though.
I
definition.
would, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're, okay.
Well,
so
I
we
think
got
we
two
should-
Change the
issues.
definition, change the
Different
title, just make it all like, this is general
residence,
residential.
yeah.
I think that is a little bit more complicated though, because then you're gonna have to change a whole lot of
Yeah.
references
100%,
within your
I think that's a
zoning.
separate conversation.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
I'm
Yeah,
not-
If
I
it was
think,
the title of it, I was gonna say do it now. If it's like substantively changing all the definitions and going through the whole code, I was gonna say, don't,
I
okay.
think we're saying two different things.
Got it.
yeah,
I'm
there's
not
two different
saying
things.
that. I'm not saying change the name of the zoning district, because you're going to change a whole lot in your zoning bylaw.
Right.
What I'm saying is your definition in your zoning is not going to match what you're proposing here, so. But I'm also saying is that your single-family 4 zoning district is pretty large area.
Mhm.
It's all in pink. I don't disagree that there's some areas that probably having 3 families makes sense, but I'm not sure this entire area really makes sense. That's all I'm saying. Just maybe.
Brian, about the description?
Well, the description, I agree that the description of single-family residential 3, single-family residential 4 is really residential, very little commercial, which essentially is what it is now. But it does not really say multifamily is allowed and 3 families allowed, things like that in the definition itself. You want to change that down the road, we can do that, or we can, take the yes with the 2 note out of there and just say special permit, or,
That's-
planning board special permit maybe, or something along those lines, but,
I think that from my perspective, when you change it to by right, that's a whole different set of planning board rules, because now you're going to the planning board for a site plan. It's just changing things if you're doing it by right, and I think it makes more sense in the single-family residential 4. I'm not saying for general residential 5, C1, or where you're proposing it there by right, that makes sense. Single-family residential 4, the character of that area, to me, if you're going to make it by right, it's more of a commercial use, in my opinion, for 3 family. When you're looking at parking now, you're looking at lighting, you're looking at different aspects of something by making it a 3 family. Throwing it under multifamily, that's a whole nother category. And I guess I understand you need a greater lot size than you would need in a regular single-family 4, but you're changing what you're doing to go through the process of getting that third unit on your apartment. I just think that you're changing what is intended in that zoning district according to our current bylaws. And if you're gonna do that, you need to change that definition as well. So I think if you're gonna add this footnote and you're gonna add it by right, then you need to change that definition too. Or make it by special permit as our nice Franklin for All has recommended.
I think you leave it with the special permit.
Yep. You add it for special
you can
permit, 'cause
be
right,
So Greg, can you like talk a little bit louder into your mic? I don't know if anybody,
No, I
I mean,
agree
I thi-
with Beth. I think you leave it with the special permit. That way they have a little more control over it per se too, rather than just everything's by right.
so I just want to like let people know that, so like this is, maybe Brian can clarify. This is actually allowing 3 families in our 3 housing unit building in single-family residential 4 which is new. So it's not like allowed there anyways.
Right.
Correct, okay? So if we allow it by special permit, then that would make it so that then the planning board would have the ability to say if things fit in that neighborhood. That's what you guys are saying, right? Okay.
And part of that is keeping the character of that particular street or that neighborhood that you're also looking at.
Exactly.
That special permit can help maintain
Right,
the
right.
integrity that you're looking for.
Yeah, I understand. I know that you guys talked about single-family resident 4 before, that it's really a big zone, and I know that you have those concerns. So I think Bruce has his hand up now.
Yeah, multifamily would be 2 or more, but under 2, they can do that by right.
Yeah,
If they go to 3, now you make them get a special permit, but they also need site plan approval from the planning board as also. So that the planning board is gonna get a bite at the apple, whether you make it a special permit or you make it easier by right with a special, with a site plan approval, because more than 2 units needs a site plan approval from the planning board.
can I just comment on that? But
yeah, because I was going to ask a question, but why don't you comment?
Sorry, and Attorney Sorrell's here, but it's my understanding, Attorney Sorrell, when something's by right with the planning board, it's very hard to deny that, and there's not much you can do. So by special permit, you have a little bit more, not that you can deny a special permit easily either, but you have a little bit more control over a special permit. 'Cause you
Special
have-
permit, as long as there's a basis, can be denied. And
Yep.
the example would be the DeRico property on the corner of Summer and Winter Street, the strip of buildings, the units at the back of there, which was denied by the planning board on one aspect of not keeping in character with the neighborhood, as I recall. And that was taken to court, and the land court judge basically said, I think this is a good project, but that's not the standard. I think there's a basis for having voted as was voted, and he upheld the planning board decision. On the other hand, as Beth alludes to, site plan approval is essentially the ability to regulate but not deny. So again, to go back to Greg's point, you have the control with the site plan, with special permit, as long as you've got a rational, reasonable basis for the denial, which is any one of those criteria or the overall criteria that's spelled out in the zoning bylaw. Whereas site plan, you can tweak it, but you're not gonna ultimately be able to say no.
Thank you. Beth?
Yeah, and I'm not saying that this is not a good idea, and I'm wondering if there's a way, and I know that there's a constant reminder that it's difficult for developers to go through the special permit process. So can we make the special permit process easier for developers, perhaps for something as small as a 3-family request to the planning board? Do you look at the requirements for submittals for plans, or do you look at the fees that are going to be happening? Like, can you look at the specific requirements for a 3-family request for a special permit and come up with a set of bylaws that are specific for this kind of development that maybe is an easier process? So we're not discouraging an applicant from coming forward to want to develop this, but at least still having some safeguards in place for this zoning district. Just thought.
Brian, I think
Couple
you want to
com-
answer that.
Couple comments. Number one, I would recommend that instead of yes with a 2 as the note, that you would change planning board special permit with a 2 as a note. Having said that, if something is allowed by right, they still have to meet all the regulations. They still have to, you know, if you say that a 3-family or 2-family is allowed by right, you still have to meet your setbacks, your impervious coverage, your parking regulations. All of those things are required. And if they don't meet those things, you don't just say, well, go ahead and build it anyway. It has to meet those things. So some projects, the zoning enforcement officer, Gus, actually may be able to say, yes, you can build a 3-family right there if you meet everything else. But because a 3-family is a multifamily, essentially, it falls under commercial development, so you have to go for the site plan review.
Okay.
But anyway, I do understand what you're saying, and I think that you already have the 2 as the note for a 2-family, which is by right, and you're requiring a little bit bigger lot. So I think to having a 3-family, you need to have that little bit bigger lot also. Whether you go with by right or special permit is up to you, but I think I can understand what you're saying. That zoning district is very large, and it doesn't have the same character, if you will, all the way through. You know, some of the things I play with that, you know, in my spare time, whatever, is, you know, redrawing a zoning line or whatever. You know, does this neighborhood fit more in with this zone or that zone? And I think that kind of master plan process can address some of those issues. But for now, I think a special permit, if somebody wants to put in a 3 unit in that district, as long as they have a little bit larger lot, the 25%. So instead of requiring 20,000 square foot, it would be, what, 2,500, I guess it would be. 25,000 rather.
Yeah.
Okay. Counselor Frangillo had his hand up before.
Yeah. I want to be able to afford to live in Franklin.
Keep saying that.
And that's really what this is. Help me find a home. No, I want to make it clear that we talk a lot about affordable housing as when we're talking about subsidized housing units, right? When we're talking about the inclusionary zoning, that's subsidized, controlled at what you can offer for rent or sell it as. There's a whole other large bucket of more affordable housing units, which are smaller units that don't require a massive yard for yourself or anything like that. These are units that young professionals can live in. These are units that our older population can live in and be within walking distance of their basic necessities, be within be around people that they want to be around, their family. They can stay in Franklin, right? We need to offer these smaller types of housing units. If you are railing and frustrated with the large housing developments on the edges of town, but you still want to enjoy the services that you want, and you know that we need more housing units offered in town, these are the exact types of housing units that we want to offer. If I may, Chair, can I again offer up some pictures of current 3-family units in in this district?
I think we already saw them, didn't we?
No, these are new ones. These are
3 families.
3 families in that unit, in that area.
Okay.
It feels like it would be helpful to know what we're talking about. Because again, they're not scary. And that's going to be the
I don't think
key.
we're scared. I think we're...
Comment, Councilor
go ahead.
Frangillo, I don't think anyone's disagreeing with you. I think that what we're commenting on, or what I'm commenting on, is exactly the point that Ryan said, that this zoning district here in pink is not consistent all the way through. So I'm not scared of a 3rd unit on a building. I'm going to tell you it's not scary to me. But what's scary to me is that somebody way out here over by the rural residential too, on this little abutting property out here, might be scared of that unit. So I'm considering them who do not live in the dense center of town. Okay, so that's what I'm thinking of right now. That's what I'm thinking. That's across the street from my house. So
There
that
you go.
does not scare me, okay? It doesn't scare me.
Right.
I'm letting you know that.
Right.
I live in downtown. It doesn't scare me. But I'm considering this entire zoning district, okay? And I understand we need to consider having a multitude of different kinds of options for people to live in, including yourself, Gobi. I get that. We should also look at accessory dwelling units. Hopefully that will come forward and be another option.
It's on the agenda.
Is it? Okay, great, good.
Yeah,
So-
it's on the agenda.
You know, I don't think anyone's disagreeing. I think it's the process of making sure, you know, I said, I'm not afraid of it being in downtown commercial. I'm not afraid of it in C1. I'm not afraid of it in GR5 by right. Single-family residential 4 is something I think should be considered for special permit. That's all.
Glenn?
Okay, I just looking for a point of clarification. Is there a motion and is there something we're looking to change here?
There
There's
hasn't
no
been a
motion.
but
There's
I'm
no
happy
motion.
to make a motion
There's no
to
motion that-
change section 6.1B with 3 housing units to change the single-family residential 4 from yes to special permit with the footnote number 2,
2, right.
leaving the remaining GR5 as is, neighborhood commercial as is. What is RB? What's that one? RB? Brian, what's RB?
Well, it's a no. It's a no.
Say again?
What's the zoning district RB? I'm sorry.
RV, residential.
Is it
residential
rural
RB.
business?
Rural business. Rural business?
Oh,
Oh, I was right.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Sorry.
Okay.
You know that one.
RV. I thought you said RV.
Rural
C1,
business.
C2, and DCU, and then the rest can stay the same. So, yes.
Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. I think we've already discussed it. But Kobe, you want to say one more thing?
No, I think I said my piece. I
Yep.
would strongly disagree with this one. Here is our exact opportunity to allow for incremental density. Where are we going to grow as a community if not allow our downtown spaces to get 1 or 2 units bigger slowly over time? If we're not allowing that, then you have no right to be frustrated with any other developments on the edge of town, because you're offering no solutions to getting us the revenue that we need to operate and offer the services that you enjoy in Franklin.
Okay.
Can I ask one question of Brian? Brian, how,
Yeah.
I think I had asked this once before. The amount of area shaded in pink, how many acres is that?
Oh, I actually don't know, because I haven't actually.
Fairly substantial, if I remember correctly.
It's large.
Yeah.
It was rather
I
large.
can probably
It's
give
probably
you.
5 times the size of R5.
Yeah.
I mean,
So-
just by just ballparking the scope of it, because there's some other
Yeah.
sections of R5 and pink that are out there in other areas, but if you're looking at the downtown core, Greg, you're right.
It-
You're probably talking 4 or 5 times the size.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
it's
very
400
substantial
acres.
amount of area.
400
that you're
acres.
talking about.
400
So yeah, 4 times the size.
Yeah, so like I said, I agree with Beth, and I think, and I understand what Kobe's thought process is, but I guess from my point of view would be, you wanna make sure you can protect the areas that these areas are gonna be affected by.
Yeah.
And I think the special permit will help that process. It's not a hindrance, it's, yeah, that fits, this one doesn't fit per se. And you're protecting the community by doing that, and you're protecting everybody's investment. So I think as a rule, it's gonna be a beneficial thing to be able to assess each individual parcel. This is a very substantial amount of area that can be affected. And I think it's our responsibility to protect what's there and for whom's there as of right now too.
And
That's all.
thank you, Greg. And also, it's like, I'll say this again, it's not allowed now. And we can allow it by special permit or by right. But right now, you can't do that there.
Which is an incremental increase.
So that, I mean, that,
That's true.
Yes.
thank you for finishing my sentence, Beth. I think we've all,
So the move is not to make it by right, but to make it by special permit?
Correct.
2 families or just 3?
Just three.
Just the three.
3, do we have a motion?
You got a motion and a second.
Yep.
Motion and a
No,
second.
no. Motion
I seconded it.
Greg seconded.
Greg
Beth made the
seconded.
motion.
Okay, that's right, we're in the discussion. I'm sorry. Sorry, you guys. I'm so glad you guys are all here with me.
It's by right in DC.
It's, and everything else stays the same.
No.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry,
Yeah.
as in the table, yes.
The
sorry,
changes
excuse me,
in the
yes.
table, and the changes of
Sorry,
the table.
yes.
Okay, so we're gonna vote. You ready, Jamie?
Yep.
Okay. Hunchard,
Yes.
Rondo,
Yes.
Wehrlein,
Yes.
Sheridan,
No.
Frangillo,
Oh.
Jones.
Yes.
Chair, yes. Okay, so I think now we are all set with this regulation schedule. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. So we're gonna move on, since we've only spent 2 hours.
You got to vote on all of this.
Oh,
to
all
move
of it.
forward.
To move forward to the council. Motion to move as addressed.
As amended.
As amended.
As amended. Sorry.
Second.
Do I have to do a roll call?
I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Motion to amend and move to full council for further review.
You're
Right.
probably gonna need an accurate count, that's the only way you're
Yep.
gonna get it.
Okay, and then it goes to the planning board.
Well, they'll go to the, both this and
Council?
the inclusionary zoning bylaw will
Yep.
both come on February 15th.
Okay,
The council would be on the February 15th for referral to planning board. Okay, because just the meeting's too quick next week and the meeting on February 1st is too stacked.
Yep.
I want Brian and Amy to go back and just make all the corrections and just get us fresh copies, you know, with the updates and the amendments and stuff like that.
Okay.
So the council and planning board both know, you know, what was amended, what wasn't. 15th would be referral to planning board. I'm guessing March, April, May would be the hearings at the planning board and the council. So it'll take
Okay.
about 3
All
months
right.
roughly.
thank you, Jamie. I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that this is gonna, the path,
Right.
right, the path forward. Okay, Hunchard,
Yes.
Rondo,
Yes.
Wehrlein,
Yes.
Sheridan,
Yes.
Frangillo,
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Chair, yes, it's unanimous. Onward it goes. Yay! Good job, everybody. That was really fun.
Unanimous.
Yeah.
That was really fun.
Consensus.
Yeah, we
Good
did it.
stuff.
Nice
Good
job.
stuff.
We did it. Well, you know, so far, so good.
Uh-huh.
Initial discussion on ADUs, since we've only used 2 hours of our 3 hours.
Initial discussion.
Who said? So Madam Chair, if I may,
Yes.
just through you to the committee, just so everybody's, there's no votes. There's no legislation for action in the packet. Amy and has been doing a lot of research, and Brian, we've also not had a full staff discussion on it. So I
Okay.
just thought maybe a couple minutes per person or so. I know we were at a housing forum together over the weekend at the MMA. I've sent you, some of you, press articles. There's Worcester, all these cities, and everybody's talking about ADUs. They can't wait to convert their garages. I just wanted to get, for Brian and Amy, a little bit of, excuse me, any thoughts that each member had, just to help frame our drafting of any ADU legislation, and just to get some feedback from the committee, or certainly the public, if Brad or Gus or anybody else had something too. We don't want to limit it, but that's why it says initial discussion.
Okay.
just what people's thoughts are.
Well, wasn't there any regulations that came out recently on the ADU?
Well, the ADU legislation did not go through the legislature at the
okay.
end of the session.
All right. Never mind.
And so that has to get all reintroduced. And, you know, it's obviously unclear if the administration are going to change anything.
Okay,
I don't know where that goes.
okay. Thank you. Beth?
What about when the housing choice initiative things came out? Wasn't there a draft that talked about minimum square footage or something to that effect? Was it like 900 square feet as a starting point for accessory dwelling units? Sorry, I'm just trying to vaguely remember.
That might be true. I know, there's always been issues with the tiny home concept and also like trailer parks and stuff, those don't count. And so, I think, I don't know, Brian, if you know that off the top of your head, if it's 900 square feet.
No, I actually
I
don't.
sorry, I don't remember the number, but
yeah.
I thought the state came out with some sort of draft regulation or some suggestion for going forward if you wanted to do accessory dwelling.
As far as a maximum size? I mean, 'cause-
Yeah, minimum or maximum or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
900 definitely wouldn't be a minimum,
It
so,
might-
yeah.
It's a minimum,
So
sorry,
I-
maximum, yeah.
For an ADU, they're gonna be a few hundred feet, up to 1,000 if you really, yeah. I'm gonna,
Oh, Amy's on, I think she has her hand up.
Amy's coming up, good.
Yeah.
Because I had basically assigned the ADUs to Amy, and we haven't really had a long discussion yet, but I know that she's been doing some research, so maybe she actually knows the answer specifically.
Okay, well,
to-
she has her hand up, so
All right.
we're going to go to Amy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what they thought that was going to go through, I don't think the state actually passed it for anything about the ADUs that they were going to. We've done a lot of research. Most of the towns surrounding us and the areas past us also have, they're pretty much special permit, but they're special permit by the zoning that they have. I think that I've actually put some stuff together to share with Brian, to share with EDC as well, is to certain zones should be allowed by right. I think more of your single family residential 1, 2, 3 are more likely to still keep the special permit, so you can notify the abutters. But I think more in the downtown area, the ADUs could be by right. So we're still doing a lot of research on what we found on that.
Okay, thank you, Amy. All right, so you just want, so I guess, I think what Amy just said is sort of how I feel, like there should be a bit allowed by right in certain areas. But I maybe even everywhere, but, but kind of just like to help people. Of course, I know we want to be able to keep track of what gets built and all that, and how those things go through the plan approval, that sort of stuff, I guess, is really important to find out, to make sure that happens too. So, Councilor Sheridan has his hand up.
So even if it's by right, it still has to go through the planning board, right? So you just can't do it.
No, not.
I don't,
No? Okay.
I don't know.
Has to go through-
By right, it goes through the building commission.
Okay.
Yeah.
But somebody has to go through somebody, so people just can't randomly make, okay.
Attorney Sorrell has,
Yeah, what's triggering the planning board with the site plan at least is the definition of commercial. It triggers the site
Okay.
plan, so
Okay.
a single family with that is not. As long as I have the floor, Madam Chair, just two general observations of these types of bylaws for protection and balancing. I think it's very common to have a requirement, because it's accessory, that it be no larger than a percentage or square footage compared to the primary. And oh, by the way, we only allow one primary dwelling on in a residential district anyway. Number two is that frequently there's a requirement that the property owner reside either in the main primary or in the accessory, so that it doesn't just become an income.
Apartment or something.
Right.
so those are the two,
Those are too common to most of the bylaws I'm familiar with.
okay, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Does that-
I have a lot of history.
Does that answer your question,
Yeah,
Councilor
and
Sheridan?
one last question. So if a two-family puts on an accessory unit, it becomes a three-family, right?
No.
No? No.
It's
Okay.
just another room.
Okay.
It's an accessory to a single family is usually how it's defined. But again, this is not etched in stone. This is how you do it in your zoning bylaw. And the issue with the state, without remembering specifically what the legislation was, But there's a balancing act going on here, even with going back to the MBTA community stuff, and that is that the state constitution was changed a number of years ago to recognize that municipalities have independent rights. That's what home rule is all about. And that limits to some extent what the state can get involved in. And so initially, when zoning was first came about, municipalities were only considered to be creations of the state. And therefore, the zoning statute was a so-called enabling statute and controlled everything. But then home rule passed in the interim. So now municipalities are free, consistent with state law. They have a lot of freedom, and it's a balancing because the legislature has limits as to how far they can go before they're impinging on that.
Okay. Counselor Sheridan, does that answer your question? Okay. Counselor Jones, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I pretty much had it answered from the Attorney Sorrell.
Okay. All right. Bruce?
Let me just give you a little history of accessory dwelling units in Franklin. For about 20 years now, the ZBA has granted multiple accessory dwelling units. They're owner occupied. We take names. Usually it's a family member, so instead of calling it an in-law apartment, we have to call it a second dwelling unit because there's no definition of an in-law apartment. So what happens if, what they were talking about, like downtown area or GR5 or something like that, if you want to put an accessory dwelling unit, you're basically creating another apartment. And if the person's not going to live there and he's just putting accessory dwelling units in, so you might have an absentee landlord there and you might have problems. That's what could bring up problems. When the zoning board grants an accessory dwelling unit, we try to see how that unit is integrated into the house itself. In other words, we don't want two separate entrances. You know, there has to be somewhere that if a family member moves out or passes away or for some reason doesn't occupy the unit anymore, it's kind of meant to dwell back together. Not to say that they couldn't sell it and somebody else come in, but they come for another special permit or extension of that permit. And that helps the building commissioner enforce it. And everybody says, well, how are we going to do that? How's it going to be enforced? How are you going to know? You're going to come down. Well, the ZBA is not an enforcing agent. The building commissioner, the zoning enforcement officer is. And when we take names, we write them down, we put them in the decision, which is filed in Norfolk. The neighbors are the best policing agent because the neighbors are going to know who's driving in, who's coming out, who's there, who's not there, and everything else. And I can tell you that if somebody changed, there was somebody else coming in and out of that unit, and if the neighbors are, you know, like Gladys Kravitz, got the window pulled back, you know, she's going to be looking out the window, and she's feel free to call the zoning enforcement agent. When he goes down there, with the decision and says, hey, is Joe Smith here, and where's Sally Smith, and, you know,
Right.
you know, across the street from your house, the father of the person that owns the house. And once they move away, so goes the special permit. You know, not to say that they can't get it again, but they have to go through the process so we can take names and know who lives there. So it's like a policing agent.
So can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
So when you said they have to get another permit, that's what you mean? If somebody new buys this property
Yes, it
with
doesn't-
an
once
AD
they-
unit,
Transferable?
then
It's not transferable.
it's not transferable.
Right.
So if they didn't get a special permit, they would have to like remove the things that
Accessory.
separate them?
No.
Accessory.
Is that what you mean?
No. They couldn't have anybody else move into it. You know, let me just explain to you how this all happened, to how we got into this. Back almost 20 years ago, up in Diana Estates, there was a family up there. It was one of the first houses in on the left-hand side. It was a huge house. Well, all of a sudden, the house doubled in size. And I'm not calling it all living area. There was a garage and everything else, and the owners of the house made a big master bedroom with a big master bath and everything else, and they stuck either the in-laws or the parents into the new unit that they created to make an accessory dwelling unit. You know, a little small thing, but the house was double. It was like a hotel. But the only thing that they couldn't do, they showed a kitchen area, and at the time, I think Dave Roach was the building commissioner at the time. He issued the building permit, but it showed a kitchen on him. He said, look, you can't use it as a second dwelling unit with a kitchen. To be able to get the second dwelling unit or to be able to prepare food, you know, with a kitchen in it, you have to go to the ZBA and get a special permit for a second dwelling unit. And that's how it all started with somebody that, you know, that was like the first one that I can remember that we did. We don't give a lot with an accessory dwelling unit that's not attached to the house. There are a few, you know, and they were done very nicely, and people don't even know that there's somebody living in it. You know, one person had his father there, and he was on an oxygen tank, and he never went out. You know, so somebody, and I think Dave had to go check on that one also. So, I mean, it's been working pretty well. I don't think we've ever turned anybody down that I can remember. One, I think, yeah, but, and I don't recall off the top of my head who it was, but, you know, because, you know, they probably deserved to be turned down for what they were proposing. But anyway, but that's how the accessory dwelling, and that's what we do, and that's what has been going on for the past 20 years.
Is that in every zone?
Every zone,
Okay.
every zone.
Okay.
Not row 1, 2, 3, you know, wherever they are,
Okay.
if they want to come in. Obviously, you don't get a lot. I can tell you, we don't get a lot. They're talking about making them by right in GR5. I'm not sure that we've ever done one in GR5, you know, or a closely knit area like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Bruce. Beth?
So accessory dwelling units, I think, are a really great way to increase our housing stock and allow seniors or, you know, younger family members to stay at home, or not necessarily family member. I guess that statement of family member, why does it necessarily have to be a family member is my point. Who's to say what a family is today? Why can't it just be Kobe wanting to live in town and moving in with somebody that has an accessory dwelling unit available? Why do we need to necessarily know who's moving in? I agree that it should be a homeowner living there that can rent out this particular space, but I don't see how it's any different than having a two-family or a three-family per se in an area that is not required to register who they have living with them. So I'm not sure why we need to know who's living there. So I don't think that's necessary.
That becomes an apartment problem, so
I
there's a
don't-
fine line there.
Right.
And they're paying a rent, so it's a whole different scenario than a family member is probably not gonna pay rent.
Probably paid to build the structure.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, well, maybe.
It's whether,
I would.
I mean, I
a
don't know.
parent, a kid comes back from college, they wanna get going, they create this accessory unit. I think the intention was for family members, for people to come back home and for family to take in parents, as an example.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
they don't have a place to go, and you bring them back. And I
That's
think
mostly
that was
how it
the,
works.
I
yeah,
guess
and I think that was the whole intention.
don't know as though that's necessarily how it's always done here in town, but I don't necessarily have an issue if it's used as an apartment for a small space. If we put a limit on how big these can be, like the maximum size, and it is used as a starter space or a senior that wants to stay in town, why can't we provide that unit? Why do we have to say you're not paying rent? I'm sorry, there's people living there paying rent. So,
I mean,
just to be honest,
wait a second. One of the things we need to think about is like, okay, so we know why we did it. We know how we do it now. It doesn't necessarily have to be the same way.
Right.
And I think that's what,
I'm saying.
Beth is saying, and I agree with her. I think, does anyone else, well, we're gonna go through everybody first and I'll come back.
All right.
Okay?
No, I was just gonna say, I was gonna take it one more step, but
Okay.
it would be, your neighbor that you'd have to take consideration too now, because
Absolutely.
that unit may turn over 2, 3, 4 times a year. That neighbor next door who's, may not wanna see that.
Right.
So I think,
I understand that. I understand.
I think the whole intention was just to have family members just kind of regroup
Yep.
as they get older, either younger or come back, that's all.
Yeah, I mean, that's good, but we might be able to do a little more.
Yeah.
But, Counselor Frangillo,
Yeah, I could not agree more with Beth, and I appreciate her thinking of people who need to find homes here in Franklin. I don't care who lives there. These are small units that offer special circumstances. Because we're still I'm okay with having owner occupied, owner has to be in one of the two. They need to have a relationship with that person. This is not a separated duplex. This is sharing the same parcel and the same space and the same electric meter and the same water meter. There are some built-in pieces that make sure that these are respectable and people. Also, we just don't care we're not allowed to care who your neighbors are. That's just not how this system works. So, I think the biggest thing that I'm thinking around accessory dwelling units, and really what we need to talk about in general, is we do need to talk about setbacks and coverage, because most places, especially downtown, won't be able to have an accessory dwelling unit because our lot restrictions are too restrictive. And so we need to revisit that. But other than that, don't care who goes in there. Make sure that they're small units and make them by right everywhere. These are a great way to add diversity to our housing stock.
Councilor Sheridan, do you have anything to add?
No, I already said mine.
You already said?
Yeah.
Councilor Jones, do you have anything else you want to say for what we need to talk about in the future?
In regards to accessory dwellings?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'd like to ask a question of our building commissioner, if that's possible.
Yes.
Get a second, Gus?
Come on up, Gus.
Come on up,
down.
Gus.
Hey.
Join us.
I'm gonna ask the same question.
No.
Congratulations on getting through. You did
No,
all-
thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, Gus, quick question. What's the delineating factor that determines a dwelling space to be what would be just an additional bedroom with, say, amenities for cooking, compared to having a room that has amenities for cooking, toilet, and a separate meter for that space? That, as soon as you start metering a separate space, do you not create, for all intents and purposes, a separate dwelling unit?
Good point. 70 square feet is the minimum room size.
70 square feet?
70 square feet
Minimum?
Under the building code, right.
That's not
Start
much.
to get bigger
No.
than that is, if you don't put a kitchen in particular a stove, it's really not another dwelling unit. And in a lot of cases, when people come before us for accessory dwelling units, they might back the stove out of the equation, and they don't need to come before the zoning board, because we don't feel that it's another dwelling unit.
Right.
Does that answer the
Attorney Sorrell wants to.
We actually have a definition of a dwelling unit in the zoning bylaw. It's one or more rooms providing complete living facilities for one family, including equipment for cooking or provisions for the same, and including a room or room for living, sleeping, and eating.
Right, and that's the definition in my code book. As far as the electrical code is concerned, that's almost the exact same definition. So for the most part, without even simply putting in an additional stove or means to have a cooking accessory or of the means, it's not even really technically another dwelling unit. It's just simply a bedroom with the means to go to the bathroom. So what I'm getting at is definitions matter here. And we have to be careful when we define these accessory dwelling units, because as soon as we start compartmentalizing a part of a house, as soon as we put a meter on it and we start charging separate fees, or not fees, but people start being required to make separate payments on utilities and gas, water, electric, and so on and so forth. Now that's not necessarily just another bedroom in a house. That, for all intents and purposes, would be an apartment. Am I not wrong?
The way we have our restrictions now is that it has to be 1 meter on the house for an accessory dwelling unit.
Fair enough. So they're sharing utilities.
That's a good check and balance system, I think. It's worked well to this point. I realize we want to try to meet the definition of what the state's thrown out, and I'm all for it. I'm listening, and we'll look at it with everybody else, and if change needs to be done, then again, I'm all for it. It's working great right now. I get it that we need need to know who lives there, and that seems to be a sticking point too.
Mm-hmm.
I think your outer lying areas, your R1, R2, and single-family 3, that's the majority of the accessory dwelling units that we permit.
Yeah.
There's not a lot downtown.
Yep.
You know, density, pervious coverage needs to be looked at. That, I don't know that we've done that with what you voted on tonight. I don't know that that needs to be changed, but this time, to look at all of those, because if you want to make these changes, the restrictiveness of the impervious coverage is going to kill a lot of projects, especially with the smaller lots downtown. And that goes, you know, Bruce has got his hand up, and
I know.
that goes a lot.
It's okay.
We'll get to that after.
Yep.
Yeah, that goes
He has the
a
floor.
long way with what you've accomplished tonight.
Perfect. Thank you, Gus. You pretty much answered my question about utilities. Thank you.
You all set?
Yes.
Thank you, Gus. Thank you, Gus, for bringing up the impervious coverage. I carry this attachment 9 with me wherever I go. Steve Sherlock could actually attest to that. Yeah.
One more thing, you're trying to do everything by right, and Bruce helped me out here. You would need possibly to go to the zoning board for relief for impervious coverage. If it's not in the water resource district, it's actually the planning board.
Right,
If
right.
you exceed that coverage.
I was going to pick on, I was going to call on Bruce next anyway, so he can answer
I
that.
can answer both of them.
Okay.
For those of the councilors that weren't here 20 years ago, Mark's been around a long time. He could probably tell you, this has been bantied about by the council on numerous occasions, accessory dwelling units, and it never went anywhere. I was kind of happy when I saw that the state was going to come up with some sort of accessory dwelling unit bylaw or something that maybe we could have used, maybe downtown or wherever, but, you know, because like I said, it's not, sometimes you get some neighbors, very seldom you ever get any neighbors, they just want to know who's living there and why they live in it. Now, what do you want to talk about the coverage? You got that thing out there?
Yeah.
If a residential home is 35%, it's 15% in the water resource district. I think it should be, especially in the downtown area, it should be up to 80%, you know, just like the commercial or the business districts are, you know, because what's the difference? You know, you're building houses there. And with today's technology, you can certainly recharge the water into the ground by many means now. They think about it a lot more now. As a matter of fact, come July, they're all going to be paying to put the water back in the ground. So, you know, because there'll be a surcharge on your tax bill. So,
Well, it's a utility fee.
utility.
It's not on your
whatever you
tax
wanna call it. We'll have another department.
That's a whole
Wastewater-
nother conversation.
Drainage department or something instead of the water department.
Stormwater fee.
Yeah,
It's
stormwater.
it's a utility fee. Yes, I agree with you. I think this is definitely something that Councilor Frangillo and I want to talk about, the impervious coverage, but that probably will go into that in the EDC with that, and we're not going to stop. That's all I have to say. But
Tonight?
no,
Never stop.
We're just moving on,
hey,
folks.
you know what? I'm having
4:30 comes early.
I'm
so,
having so much fun with you guys. So does anyone else have anything else they want to tell the staff about ADUs, that things they're thinking about?
Just a comment. I
Wait,
know you were gonna go ahead.
actually, we have a comment from the audience.
Good.
Oh, it's been
Not as
going to
passionate.
ADU business now, right?
No, just something to bring up. I don't know if you guys
Is
are
it?
addresses, I don't mean to make a big discussion, but I think an owner-occupied thing, that gets big into Airbnbs and stuff. That's a big debate. So I don't know if you guys have talked about that, what that is, but that's very tied together. A lot of towns and cities put limits on that, so the owner has to be there, so it doesn't become little hotels and little things in transit nature. It's a very
Right.
important piece to ADUs. I agree.
Thank you, Bruce.
Very true.
Amy had her hand up, but I think
That's Brad.
That's Brad.
That's Bruce.
Brad. I'm sorry, Brad.
Brian.
Now I'm really sorry.
Motion to adjourn?
I'm really sorry, Brad. I'm just picking on you. I can't help it. Amy, I think Amy had her hand up. Maybe, do you still have your hand up, Amy? Okay.
I did. Thank you, Madam Chair. I think one of the biggest things that we don't have right now is the detached ADUs. And there's like a lot of research about Living Little smaller houses, you know, you might kind of put the size of a shed in your backyard, but you'd have, you know, livable with plumbing and studio type apartment. So I think that is like, if we're looking at ADUs, we don't have the detached part about it. We have the attached part, and I think that's very doable, and that's very easy to work that through, whether it's special permit or it's by right in certain zones. But more and more research I've done is that looking at the detached, which does include larger lots. So if someone has a 15,000 lot, they still have to meet the setback. They still have to meet all your setbacks in the front, side, backyard. So I just wanted to have you guys consider that, not tonight, but think of that as it comes forward.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
I'm going to go to Brian.
Okay,
I think, did I get his name right?
yeah.
No, I'm Bruce.
Did you?
So, I think the ADUs can take almost as long a time as we went through with housing density. So
Yeah.
it is, I'm good, we're starting out slow here, and this is good. The separate ADU, as Amy was saying, is something that in some parts of the country is a really big deal. Everybody, I think a few months ago, we talked about ADUs for a few minutes and said we're going to be taking it up later on. And at that time, I mentioned the document called the ABCs of ADUs. Do a Google search on it, and you'll find everything you really want to know about what types of ADUs there are above the garage, separate buildings in the back of the building. ADUs need to be, do they need to be on the side or in the back of a backyard, for instance? You can't have them in your front yard. You can't put a thing a little bigger than a shed in the front yard and call it an ADU. Do they have separate utilities? Do they have separate parking? All the other issues that are related to that kind of development really need to be addressed, or we continue doing things the way we are now. Allowing a owner in single family 1 and 2 and 3 or whatever to come forward and say, I want an ADU on my single family home, and it's not going to impact the neighbors, and this is why allowing a ZBA special permit is probably the way to go.
Right.
But once you get into more changes, I think then you need to have more regulation to address the things.
I agree.
If you end up with an ADU that is very close to having a separate apartment, right, then that person may have an additional car. Not that it, in downtown probably won't matter, but maybe it will in certain neighborhoods. Do you have to have them required to have 2 parking spaces, 3 parking spaces in a single-family house with an ADU? Is that 3 parking spaces, or is just the 2 that they're originally required to have? On-road parking in some neighborhoods can be a nightmare. If you add in ADUs into those areas without addressing that issue, it can be, it can get a little bit worse. I think we need to increase density of housing without doubt. ADUs are a very important component of that, but it needs to be addressed in a logical way, or leave it alone for now and see what happens. I remember you're saying over the last 20 years has been discussed a lot. It has. I've been here for over 15, and I think 3 different zoning workshops my department put out there, we discussed ADUs and all these other issues. We got the ADUs on all of them, and Bruce basically was saying, no, we're doing fine, let's leave it alone, and then we did. Do we do that again, or do we actually regulate it in another way? Do we allow, anywhere we're allowing a 2-family by right, do we allow a single family with an accessory unit by right? What does that mean? Because it's not a multifamily, but it's a 2-family at the most. So that would just go through the building commissioner, I'm assuming, that they had to have certain things met. And if they have to, what are those things that they have to meet? Do they have to have a separate kitchen? Do they have to have a full bath, essentially, or just a toilet? I mean, I don't really know, but I think those are the things that we a building commissioner would be able to answer, other than, you know, so.
Okay.
But anyway, so this is just a few things, and the definition of an ADU, I think, is something we definitely need to focus in on.
Okay. Thank you, Brian. I'm going to go to Bruce and then to Jamie.
Just a
Okay.
clarification, there are some detached ADUs in Franklin. I think there was actually 3 people that applied. All 3 got approved. 1 was never built. There's one on the corner of Peck and King, and there's another one on the corner of Daniels and Lincoln.
Okay, I know where that is.
There you go, I knew you would.
Yeah, I like
And
it.
just one
It's
other thing,
nice.
going back
It's
to the
really nice.
discussion,
It looks good.
discussion at the time. They
Yeah.
were looking at Norfolk's got an ADU bylaw, this town's got an ADU. It puts a lot of work. Instead of being the building commissioner, it'd be the ADU inspector.
Thank you very
You know, so,
That
you then you're gonna need, if you're gonna go to ADUs and you're gonna do them that way, then you're gonna need more
More
help
people.
in the building department.
Well, Bruce is already checking out all the Bruce. I just did it again.
That's pretty cool.
Well, I was gonna say, Gus is already checking all the weights and measures and everything too, so we can just like add that on to
By the
Gus's
way-
thing. I just said Gus twice the right way. But Jamie, I'm going to
Thank
Jamie.
you, Madam Chair.
Yep, I'm just seconding him, by the way.
Okay, there's no vote,
That's-
there's no vote.
No, he
Roll
said
call.
motion to adjourn. He did, and I just said second.
Through you, Madam Chair, a couple quick points. One, we may want to consider, in the absence of any formal regulations, definition, as Brian pointed out. You know, ADUs are right now possible, right? So maybe there needs to be a little educational brochure, flyer, information that gets put out that ADUs can actually go through, because I do agree with Gus and Bruce. They've actually been happening. They've been happening all over the place. Which comes back to my first point, when I appreciate Bruce bringing it up. Before we get into regulatory, allowing these by right, all that stuff, we are going to need the ADU commissioner, because if you discredit neighbors, then we will be out refereeing these things a lot more than anything else. And so the public has to have a chance to know what's going on next to them. We've been through this a little bit, not as much, but with chicken coops in backyards and putting on incorrect property and all sorts of different things, and we got to go out and enforce them later. So there is some unforeseen consequences. But I think one of the germane points is we can do those now. It's been working well. If there are properties in R1, R2 that want that detached unit or want that unit in the garage or have a special situation with a home care situation of somebody who's older or somebody who needs help, they can seek that relief out of the ZBA, and that's been working just fine. And we shouldn't allow all of this other process or whatever happens with the legislature, because I think they're going to bring it back. Something's going to happen in the next year or two. But I do have to say that, and just caution too much too quickly, because this is one issue that can get out of control extremely fast. From a regulatory standpoint, from a friction standpoint, from a NIMBY standpoint, from a neighborly relations standpoint, from cars in the streets, all sorts of unintended consequences can come from these things. And so I think one thing I would propose to the EDC at some point is like considering a promotional thing that we actually do allow these now, and this is the process to go through them as the town kind of weighs through what are the options in terms of the regulations on ADU. So I'm fully in favor of them, and I just want to remind everybody why we're here talking about them. It's the very uninspirational situation where nothing is affordable. So we've all conceded now, because nothing is affordable for either seniors and parents to stay in their homes or young people, we've now conceded the fact that because we can't build any real housing, now the buzz is, well, let's get an ADU, because that will be a housing unit so Kobe can have a kitchen or whoever can have like a separate unit. And we've just said, well, we'll just dispense with the real goal of actual real housing that's affordable. We'll just say, well, we'll concede to a 300 square foot unit, and that's going to be the only way young people, young professionals, or elderly can actually have a unit. And so I just throw that out there because ADUs have been going on for decades, but all of a sudden in the last year or two, they've become a buzzword everywhere. And I think largely that's because we've said, well, we can't build real housing or make it affordable. We'll concede and say, well, we'll just have an attached unit on there. So I'm in favor of the ideas of the expansion of family. I don't think we need to hover over all these things with people. And Brad brought up another point that I was going to bring up on my list, which is we do have to consider the Verbo and the Airbnb issue,
Yeah,
which will
definitely.
unquestionably be one. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jamie. I'm not sure I agree with you completely on what you just said, but I think I haven't given up on affordable housing. I think we need all these different little. It's trying to make our inventory larger and different and multiple different types of inventory is kind of what I think. But I'm going to go to Kobe quickly.
Yeah. So I am a proud resident of an accessory dwelling unit. That is the only reason I'm able to live here and be sitting behind this council. That's not something I'm embarrassed about or something that we should be ashamed of. These are real housing units that we should be opening up to more people. We're hearing more and more. My generation is just, if you look at the demographics over the years, we've just entirely hollowed out my generation of people. We don't need massive houses and large lawns. We just want rooms to live and a small kitchen and to be able to connect to some of our basic needs. So the sort of looking down on these is not something that I'm going to get behind. The other thing is, who has this been working for? All of what we're talking about, the reason why the state is considering mandating that we produce ADUs, the reason why the state is having the MBTA Communities Act, the reason why we're behind and paying for our infrastructure, tens of millions of dollars in backlog, is because we've stopped building new housing units at the rate of population growth. Every single step that you have to take something to someone and then go to the next meeting and have it pushed to the next meeting, that means you have to hire a lawyer and builders, and all of these comes with fees, they come with time, and they just result in fewer housing units being built. If there are things that we enjoy, that we like, that we want in our town, that we know already work, let's allow them to be built and give people more homes in Franklin. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Third.
All in favor, signify. I'm not doing a roll call vote.
Aye.
Okay, thank you so much for watching us tonight.
Thank you, Brad.
I want to thank the whole steering committee for being here with us. Thank you